I have a deep love for this country. So from the moment I went to Hopkins, it was with the intention to come back to Bangladesh and work here as a public health professional.
There's an unconscionable thing taking place out here. That is, mothers and children are dying needlessly.
We have one daughter right here who died.
We're looking at roughly 11,000 mothers dying from pregnancy-related causes and well over 250,000 infants who die in this country every year from likely poor nutrition. We're trying to look at whether or not improving the nutritional status of women and infants, particularly through vitamin A or beta-carotene, will prevent some of those deaths from occurring. If we find that this intervention even reduces 20% of those deaths, we'd be looking at saving about 50,000 infant lives per year in this country. We've got to get the science right, because in countries like Bangladesh, where resources are scarce, if we make recommendations, we want to make recommendations that are sound, that are based on scientific evidence. And so our job here is to get it right. Once we get it right, it can move mountains.
This is the first step in that chain. Asking a question, finding the answers, developing a program, and then improving lives. At Hopkins, the thing that we learn to be is internationalists. We become scientists for the world.
Good morning. Good. Wow, I was waiting there for a second. No. Good morning and welcome. My name is Mike Ward. I serve as Associate Dean of Student Affairs, and I'm so glad so many of you are here today. My next bit of news is congratulations. Uh-oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. And I even practice this stuff every time. Congratulations is truly in order. You've gone through a very rigorous admissions process. You've done the work. You've gotten the transcripts in, the materials in, you've written the great essays, and you've made it. I will say that there are many great students who don't make it, so indeed, I want to give you a round of applause and give each other a round of applause on that. So about 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to start here as Dean of Student Affairs. I was at the university prior to that, and I learned that one of the most important things to do as dean is tell people about history, give people an overview of Hopkins. It's one of those things. So you can see here a little bit of Hopkins overview in general. The school is based on the university is based on some really different concepts in which you'll see from some of our competitors. I mean, it's really a research university, and we contend to be America's first research university. What makes us different? Why are we so different, and why am I telling you this? Well, you know, schools like Harvard, they work on this whole different model, the British model, and we've come to the table on a German model. And you might say, oh, that's all nonsense about now. But our origins right now are based on people coming to follow scholars, to do research, and to study. The different environment that you see at other institutions is more of the British model, more of a community-based model. We're here with a mission that's really simply put to produce and to understand and to put out knowledge for the world. So that's one of the distinguishing things that I would say about our history that everyone should know about it. But let me ask you a question before I went too far. My congratulations, I should have asked you. How many people here have already made up their mind that I'm coming here in the summer or the fall? How many of you? Just show me your hands. All right. I see Professor Terrett's coming today. All right. So did we see that, folks? Our staff members here, did we see that? Okay, we got some people to convince today. All right, we're going to do that. I think we'll do that really well. Let me tell you a little bit more about our university. The university has 3 major campuses in Baltimore, Homewood Campus, East Baltimore, and Peabody. One in D.C. and Montgomery County, and we have facilities throughout this Baltimore, Washington region. Have major campuses in China and Italy as well. The thing that's rich about the university is there are 9 different schools. The one thing that's missing to Professor Terrett's demise here is that we don't have a law school. But nonetheless, it gives us great opportunities to collaborate, great opportunities for internships, great opportunities for employment. As a matter of fact, the university and the hospital together are the state's largest private employer. So that gives opportunity that can be unsurpassed with a lot of other institutions. And the other thing is our proximity to DC, as I'm sure you're all aware. So today, since there are a few hands that are up, and I like seeing those hands that are up, but for all of you, whether your hand was up or not, I think today is a great day for you to take the time to get your questions answered, to check out a lecture. There are 3 to choose from. You'll see up a little bit later on the PowerPoint, and to learn the ins and outs of the department or program that you'll be a part of. We are one of the largest schools of public health. We're one of the oldest schools of public health, and we've been consistently ranked #1 school of public health. And when you say large, sometimes you think, well, am I going to get lost there? Am I going to be important there? I think the big thing about learning your department is departments are smaller communities where people connect, and a lot of your interaction happens there. Just because it happens there doesn't mean you have to stay there all the time, but nonetheless, it's a good thing to know what your department is like, what your program is like, because that's where you're going to be spending a lot of time, and that's where a lot of the action will take place. You'll also get to have the opportunity to hear about services and resources that are available to you. Something that really distinguishes us from many other schools of public health and just schools in general is that we're extremely decentralized at Hopkins. And that might sound like, oh, well, who wants to be a decentralized place? I think you might be, because I'll tell you why. I think services are tailored towards you here. So in our student services area, we have a career services area that is oriented just for the School of Public Health. You're just not a number in the pool of all the other schools at the university. We have services just the same, not just services, but the ability to be involved in the community, and a lot of the action that goes on is oriented towards health professions. So you'll see that we're a little bit tailored than what you'll see from others. Other thing I can tell you, as not being a public health professional myself, is while you're here, ask people about what they're passionate about. What are they interested in? What do they like? What are their research interests? And I think you will see some of the shyest, most introverted people light up and give you a lot of excitement. And this is not a joke. This is not a sales pitch. This is reality. So as you're walking through, find out. Figure it out for yourself. And I think you'll find that, boy, this is a really exciting place. Because on any given day, we'll have many lectures at noontime, and you'll have to choose what you want to do, what you want to participate in. And I think you need to be wise about that, because a lot of your time needs to be focused on completing degree programs. At least my other hat, that's what I always tell people. All right. You can see here we have a seminar series. This is a small sample of what you'll get to see if you come here. Just a small sample of some of the different topics that may come up. And you may have heard of our gun summit, and a lot of press has been there. Professor Terrett, if you could just wave your hand. He's in the back there. He's going to give this talk to us a little bit later today, and I think it'll be very interesting for those of you who want to go, but not everybody now, not everyone, because there are 2 others that you can choose from, as you can see here. So what's going on around the campus? Just different things. These are things that I just pull off the web from time to time for these talks, and I got to say, I think I pulled an old set of slides on, but Injury Center, is dedicated to closing the gap between injury and research and practice. It's been around for quite a while, and it's done significant work. Think about car accidents, think about seatbelts, think about things like that. M-Health is something that has really been expanding throughout the world. Just the ability to use mobile devices to help and to use evidence-based research to support your efforts. That's just a few of the things that are going on around campus. Student organizations, we have over 40 student organizations at any given time. I say at any given time is because what I've learned here is that the student organizations ebb and flow with the interests of the student body. So you can see there's a lot to choose from. This is just within our school. There are other associations, for instance, the Chinese Students and Scholars Association, as the separate group, has university affiliations as well, and there are other rich university organizations, but these are school organizations within our school. All right, there we go. Okay, so next up is my opportunity to introduce my colleague, and I would say just an all-around great guy, Dr. Thomas Burke. As you can see, he served as a Deputy Commissioner of Health in the state of New Jersey, and that's the picture that you'll see on the left, or actually on the right, as I look on the screen. It's a little bit opposite here. And one of the other things I would say is he's a guy that's so well connected to what's going on in the public health world. Anybody check out his podcast? Anybody? Oh, you guys are missing it. You're missing the action. You got to check it out. Nonetheless, I would say he's a guy that I've seen in all around different places just in our community involved in public health. And I wrote this, this little line about, I think from a year or so ago, I saw him on the subway and he was headed out to City Hall as I was coming in one day. And I thought, wow, he's really out and about. DC one day, City Hall the next day, wherever he needs to be to improve the world's health. But I would say that one of the most important things I would say about Tom is that he's a 4-time recipient of the Golden Apple. And people who have sat in your chair make the call on who's a good faculty member, who's a good professor, and he's been acknowledged by students who've taken his classes. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Tom Burke to the podium.
Okay, I think I have to, there we go. Welcome. All right. So you may wonder why there are 2 microphones up here. If you choose to attend Hopkins, you will take biostats in this room. You'll be in this room a lot. And I want you to notice through your career as a student here, how many visitors speak into this lamp. This was designed by someone from Harvard. Just messing with you. All right. So congratulations. Mike already said that, but it's a big deal. I know the number of applicants. I know the selection process. I know how tough it is to get in here, all right? Because I didn't get in. No, really, I should explain that. So I got my MPH. How many of you are in the MPH class? Or want to be? Yeah, okay. How many PhD? Right, okay. And the other MS PHs are great. Okay, wow, good distribution. Lots of choices too. So I investigated coming here when I was working in actually an alternative high school in my hometown, Jersey City, New Jersey, and realizing that as a teacher one-on-one, I could work with one student at a time, but if I really wanted to make change in things, I had to understand more than just that one-on-one, whether it's patient relationship, student relationship, and public health is all about populations. And so I became aware of public health as a field, and I checked out Hopkins, obviously. And at that time, you had to have an MD or a terminal clinical degree. It was a much smaller, different school. But now we have so many rich professions, so many departments, such a different perspective on public health education. So it is true. I didn't get in because I didn't apply because I wasn't eligible. And so I went to the University of Texas with my Jersey accent and was nicknamed Tex. I think they were making fun of me. But anybody from Texas? How y'all doing? See? Anybody from Jersey? How you doing? All right. It's just same message, basically. Hello. How about California? Great. All right, well, hold that thought because I want to show you a slide from California. But so first, when when I want to convince you why to come to Hopkins, I turn to one of my most inspirational films that I enjoy, and that is, any of you seen Napoleon Dynamite? Great. Do you have chapstick with you? Okay. So those of you who haven't seen Napoleon, it's a coming-of-age film. I totally relate to Napoleon because I can dance really cool. But I also relate to Pedro because he was the outsider who ran for president of the student body, and he gave the best political speech I have ever heard. And so I just want to share that with you because I think it's inspirational in terms of your day here at Hopkins and your choices. You have to listen real quick. It's a short speech. Politicians should learn something from Pedro.
If you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true.
It's awesome. So now do I have to close that? Okay. I don't think we want to watch all the YouTube things. Okay. So I have to tell you, so I've been working in public health since those days, in the mid-'70s when I didn't get in here. And it is about dreams. And public health is fundamentally different. Right? One thing that I hope you get a sense of in this school today is there are jobs, and then there are vocations. And there are people who are really successful at their jobs and have different motivations. But the one amazing thing, and the reason I stay here, and the reason I'm so motivated to be in public health and to try and continue to change public policies, is first of all because we can, because public health is really important. But secondly, because of the people I get to work with and the people I get to teach every day, who either because of personal experience, many of you have probably had a loved one that has suffered from a disease or disability where we're really not too good at understanding it yet, and you're driven by that. Certainly that was part of my drive to understand environmental pollution and disease. I'm from Jersey, right? And so many people have much more than just a scholastic desire to learn in a traditional way or to look for employment in a traditional way, but a true calling to be committed to things. And Mike talked about this when he talked about the passion for what we do, but I hope you realize that public health as a field, because of that, has some of the most tremendously committed, selfless people that I've ever met, and it's just terrific. And so I should remind you that I'm here speaking on behalf of the real dean. I'm the associate dean for practice, and so this is our dean, Mike Clagg, and you can see for a man born in 2005, he looks tremendously mature and knowledgeable, and has an MD and a master's degree from here. He's one of our graduates, and anyhow, he welcomes you as well. Mike is pretty awesome because it's a great time to be in public health. Now you might say, okay, global recession, great time to be in public health. Needs have never been greater. They really haven't. Just think of the loggerheads that we have politically here in this country. Think of the conflicts around the world. Think of the disparities in health from nation to nation and all the work ahead for us. That's the difference between public health and other fields. Other fields, it might be a great time to be at Microsoft when things are booming, right? But it's a great time to be in public health when the needs are the greatest. And it's also amazing. I've had a tremendous amount of fun. So those of you in California, let's see if this pointer works. Hold on. Okay, so some of you said you were from California, so no disrespect, but so that's me in outside of Riverside, California, and so first Hopkins quiz. So what do you think that stuff is? Anybody from LA? All right, you might know some of that stuff. Right, that's the poop from LA. All right. Because in a previous life, protecting the Jersey Shore, I worked to ban ocean dumping of that stuff. Because it always seemed to wash up on the beaches in New Jersey in July, and I had to close the beaches. Because a little take-home public health science note today is half the battle in public health is to keep poop away from people. All right? Now, some physicians say eat a little poop each day and it builds your immune system, but I say keep it away from people. And the very foundations of public health begin with the London cholera epidemics and the foundations of epidemiology and trying to have clean water. And in their effort to clean the waters of California, they've decided to take the solid waste from sewage treatment in Los Angeles and apply it to the farms in Riverside. And so I actually had to go out and check this out as part of the National Academy of Sciences, because even though it's been 200 years since the great sanitary movement, where we realized the need to clean our waterways and manage our waste, we're not managing it too well. We've moved it out of our waterways and onto our land and still haven't really figured it out. So that's not the most honorable thing I've done in public health, because it named me that one of my nicknames is Dr. Poop, which is not cool. But so other fun things. So nobody really realizes you're talking to Dr. Poop here, but I realize I've won awards and stuff, but I didn't really arrive in public health until I did this, and I went to be on the Dr. Oz show. And then my own kids realized that I had a job. And like, oh, cool, Dad, you met Dr. Oz? So, yeah, I met Dr. Oz. He actually went to Penn around the same time I did. He's a little bit younger than me. And you can see we look different because he's got way too much hair. But a little inside thing, if you look really closely at it, he colors the heck out of it. All right, so I think he has white hair. Just saying. Sorry, Mehmet. So why come here? I want to talk about the opportunities of this place a little bit. We have a tremendous history, and I personally think the students are the greatest resource that we have. Some of the faculty are pretty good too, but I want to kind of go through some things. And first, our origins. You heard a little bit about that. So we were founded, and I'm going to give a little bit of history here, and I know some people get, well, okay, so 1916, that was before your time, right? I'm actually dealing with chemical armaments that were being developed around 1916 and 1917 right now, down in Washington, D.C., where before the nuclear weapons of World War II, chemical weapons were the scourge, as you probably know from the trench warfare of World War I. And some of our legacies are still here. But the school was founded then in 1916, 2 years before the great influenza pandemic, by William Welch. And it was really to bring a new model. And I think that's a trademark of the school that Mike talked about. We used to be called the School of Hygiene and Public Health. But what this model brings together is the science, the hygiene, the research, and the practice. So I'm from the practice world, and I'm the dean for practice, because I don't think there should be a wall between the researchers and the practitioners. So we're all about that continuum from the discovery of new knowledge to the implementation to change the world. And that was the vision of the place. And so you can see in our mission, it's about education, but also about discovery and application. And I think that really sets us apart. Lots of trailblazers. So here are some of the older folks. You can drink water almost anywhere around the United States today and feel pretty good that you won't be doubled over, right? 10 hours later. Any of you ever traveled internationally and really gotten maybe a little bit of traveler's diarrhea? Yeah. Okay. So what we take for granted in this country, many other countries really are struggling to get clean drinking water. And it's a real challenge. But Abel Woolman here at Hopkins, in our Department of Environmental Engineering, really transformed the world with his work in the chlorination of drinking water. Actually, in 1905, my hometown of Jersey City became the first place in the U.S. to chlorinate water because of tremendous outbreaks of waterborne illness. Similarly, we've blazed trails. In 1917, E.B. McCollum was the first chair of what was then called the Department of Environmental Chemistry, and he is a founder of the field of nutrition as we know it today. His work on vitamins and the importance vitamin supplementation and the importance of vitamins in deficiency diseases. And many of you may know that Rachel Carson, who was also here at the school, her book, The Silent Spring, about the disappearance of bird life in this country and the impacts of persistent pesticides in the environment, transformed our thinking about environmental health and led to the Environmental Protection Agency and many of our things there. And similarly, we have, through the more modern age, Al Somer, hopefully you get to meet our former dean, realized the connection between vitamin A and children's health and children's mortality, and how a supplement of vitamin A that costs pennies can literally save millions of lives of young children in the developing world. We are pioneers in the development of the field of chronic disease epidemiology, and one of my favorite faculty members and mentors is Kirti Shah, who linked HPV, the HPV virus, with cervical cancer, and led to so much prevention with a disease that is preventable. So that's kind of the historical leaders, but I think what's really cool is people I've taught and the folks that are potentially in your class are going to be world leaders. I have a former student who was, I distinctly remember, now I'm not going to do this for you, but I can do the moonwalk. All right? Because before there was Napoleon Dynamite, Michael Jackson's moonwalk was pretty cool. And if you want to get people's attention in class and they're not paying attention, when the professor starts to moonwalk across the stage, it'll get their attention, right? So I'm not going to do that today because we're taping. But I remember doing the moonwalk with this really great student, and he's the president of Turks and Caicos now, and he's a physician. He's an MPH, and so many of our more recent alum are in leadership positions as health ministers around the world, and it is not dreaming when I say that you and your colleagues at Hopkins will really change the world and lead the world. We've had surgeons general, we've had deans, and that doesn't mean the pressure's on to do that, but it's certainly within the scope of what Pedro said, your wildest dreams. So I want to talk about the students because I think the students are our greatest resource, and the faculty. So that's Steve Terrett's profile. See, check it out. So back to our students. There's 2,000. Wow, that's big. We're a big school. We are the largest in many different degree programs. Tremendous representation from around the world, over 83 nations. And faculty, also about 500 faculty, with incredibly varied interests and also incredibly different involvement throughout the world in national policy. So you can find folks here who are the leaders in the fields that you're interested in. Also, one of the questions I like to ask students is, so where are you grounded? Where's your spiritual home? What's your focus? Many of you are probably interested in international health. Well, this is a place to be. Whether it's the more developed world of Europe, I get to teach in Barcelona a couple of times a year. It's awesome to go to Barcelona, but to teach my science, risk sciences, the European community as they grapple with things like horse meat in the diet and how to keep the food safe when you have 27 different countries arguing about how to do it. That's my idea of a good challenge. But in the developing world, in literally all the continents, we are there. So you'll get to go to pretty cool places. So that's me at the Taj, right? It was 145 degrees that day. Have any of you been to India? Oh, awesome. Anybody from India? Okay. They drive really crazy there. People talk about New Jersey drivers. I think the biggest health hazard is driving down the road in India, but it is an awesome place, and one of the coolest places. I got to go and visit and work with the Ministry of Health on environmental issues, and what a number of public health challenges there. But I'm going to talk about the school a little bit now, and not that, see, I am not hung up on rankings, all right? It doesn't matter to me that we are the #1 school of public health, and we have consistently been the #1 school of public health for 20 years. That doesn't make any difference to me. But we are #1 in grants, in funding for research. Harvard's #2, but a distant #2. And you can work your way down. These are good schools, and it doesn't, rankings don't matter to me. I just want to, okay. We have 10 academic departments. One of the challenges, and it was great to see so many different degrees represented here, there's a lot of different choices. We have 10 academic departments and many certificates. The most outstanding is the Risk Sciences and Public Policy Risk Certificate, which I direct. But as you know, we have 6 master's degrees, different types of doctoral degrees, and 500 courses. Don't try to take them all, really. All right, just take 18, maybe 20, pushing it for our credits per quarter. But also, we're breaking down the walls of this place, and there are practical experiences. So why come to Baltimore? Why be near Washington? Because you can see the public policy process. You can be out there in the field. You can smell the breath of the community. And it's a challenging community here. Some of you may have seen The Wire. I don't believe that stuff. Right? It's exaggerated. Right? And that's good entertainment. Just like House of Cards is anybody watching the House of Cards? Whew. But if you want to be in the policy process, all right, you have to be aware of these things. What better place to be here where they filmed the House of Cards and The Wire? So I mentioned the departments. You can see those, and we have the laboratory departments, and we have the very applied departments. We have mental health and behavior, and biostat and epidemiology, and my favorite department, health policy and management, because we become expert in all those fields and synthesize those to try and help make policy change. And I mentioned the practice and service, getting outside the walls. It's a place where you can do that. My office, the Office of Public Health Practice of Training, has a practicum navigator to help you try to get out there and have real life experience. And frankly, that's also important in the job market. All right? You have to have played the game a little bit and been out there and seen the application of the science too. So why should you accept? All right, so you all know Letterman's top 10. I'm going to finish with the top 10. All right. So I've actually been given this talk for a couple of years, and I change it every year, but I realize I can't count to 10. So rather than have one of you, because there's always someone who points out your typos in any lecture, so rather than give you the joy of telling me that, hey, Tom, you got 11 up there, I realize I can't count to 10. All right. So what's number 10? All right. I mentioned this, your fellow students. The greatest resource of this school, right? The students. The networks that you will develop here, international networks from your colleagues you're going to school with, will stay with you for the rest of your life. You'll network with the faculty as well. But we have this tremendous sense of cohorts, tremendous sense of togetherness under this roof that puts international differences aside. So many things where people work together, and it's just amazing. And plus, let's face it, you guys are really smart, so it's fun. It's easy to teach here. You don't have to say things twice. You guys get it. All right. You also get the perspective from the edge. And I'm happy to say that's usually the leading edge. Sometimes it's tough to be a pioneer, and there'll be lots of pushback on the politics of public health, on the budget cuts during sequestration. But whether it's science or practice or policy, you're going to be reading about this stuff in the papers that you're working on in class. You also have a chance to get some of the best mentors. So my mentor is Dr. Edith Schomrich. You'll see this beautiful painting of her right there in the hall, in our main hallway. And she's been a mentor throughout the process. She took this kid from New Jersey under her wing, and somehow I made it here, and I got to be full professor and got the first inaugural Public Health Practice Award from the Schools of Public Health as the leading academic practitioner. So on the serious side, there are phenomenal mentors, but also on the light side, that's me with my chair. in the Department of Health Policy and Management. And sometimes you have to pay your mentors back. So we were having a holiday party or something, and the students had brought in a costume for Don to wear. He's the shorter guy. I'm the taller guy with the bushy hair. And Don came in and said, "Tom, I need you to do this with me." And so sometimes you pay your mentors back, and there's me wearing a grass skirt and coconuts. The academic offerings, our courses, the variety of courses, the blend of things you can do here is amazing. So I recommend you start thinking right now, what is it I want to get out of this education? What's my toolbox going to look like? How am I going to present myself to the world when I leave Hopkins? And you can build it here. Think of those 500 courses. Think of the series. Think of how you can put together research, practice, communication, management. And then there will be opportunities to refine those in practice. Here in Baltimore, in Washington, Annapolis, internationally, working with our international researchers and policy people. The research itself, multidisciplinary from cell to society. I've had a tremendous opportunity to be on the front lines, and whether it was working with FEMA to try and figure out why all those kids were getting sick in those trailers after Katrina, which is one reason why we don't have trailers on the Jersey coast right now, and maybe we need them for some people. Clearing the beaches that I talked about before people learn to put a little bit more care into our wastewaters. Working here in Baltimore to help clean up the residues of our industrial waste. I mentioned the chemical weapons down in Washington, D.C. We're working, doing a community study right there in one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. to try and make sure that those folks aren't becoming ill because of the residues from World War I. And the thing I'm happiest about, I'm working with all the federal agencies on rewriting the book on risk assessment so we can make better decisions about public health. So we're getting down to the final top. So I think life in Baltimore, yes, Baltimore, home of the Wire and all that other stuff, all right? So I don't know if you're a big Joe Flacco fan. I'm an Eagles fan, but we have the world champ. Did I mention we were #1 school? We have the world champions in football. And Joe's a clean-cut, nice guy. And where's he from? Whenever I ask that question, the answer is Jersey, okay? He's from South Jersey, and he wears Donovan McNabb's number 5 in homage to the Eagles. That's a little known fact. But it's a great place to be, from the food to the Ravens to lacrosse. And actually, we're a pretty good school, like #1. Just to mention that, the rankings, you can see the people looking up at us. Harvard, Michigan, Columbia, University of North Carolina, they're okay. But really, what's most cool, and I think about this, so today, think about walking across the street to the bookstore and checking it out and buying a Hopkins hoodie and seeing how it feels on you, right? So, because you're not really into a school until you will look so cool in a Hopkins hoodie, all right? And then finally, just maybe, back to Pedro, this is the place where all your wildest dreams become true. Millions at a time. So thanks for listening to me for a little bit, and we'll move on with our program now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. That's my least favorite picture of the hoodies. He forced us to do it. So good morning and welcome to the Bloomberg School. It's so nice to see a lot of familiar faces and be able to finally put your name to them. And it's just great to have you here and learning about the Bloomberg School. Our job today is to answer any questions that you have. And we want you to be leaving with the tools that you need to make your decision and hopefully accept. But we have staff throughout the building. And throughout the event that you'll be, as you know already, we're kind of following you around. But we want to be here as a resource for you. So if you have any questions, and if it gets towards the end of the day and you still have remaining questions, just find some admission staff. We all have these fancy little badges on. And just, talk to the students, talk to the faculty. We're all here to help you today. So welcome again. And I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Leslie Vink. I'm the Director of Recruitment with the Student Affairs Office. And I do want to point out my other half, Taryn Maloney, who's our Assistant Director. We are kind of heading this day, and if you have questions, just grab one of us and we'll figure things out for you. So we are going to move right along, and I have the great pleasure of introducing our next presenter, Michael Estrella. He's a PhD candidate in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology here at the Bloomberg School and recipient of the prestigious Hopkins Sommer Scholarship. Growing up in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Bushwick, a place once steeped in poverty and crime, Michael was raised in a low-income, single-parent immigrant household. Living on the receiving end of a community in need of help convinced him that getting a degree could not only change his life, but also the lives of others. Michael turned his attention to science, graduating from St. Francis College in 2008 with a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry and Biology. His focus evolved into biomedicine, and he is now studying a process by which bacteria rid themselves of foreign genetic material. Michael wants to figure out how to control the mechanisms at work in hopes of stemming antibiotic resistance. It's an investigation that he'd like to continue in his own lab someday with his own cadre of students. If I can train other scientists, he says, that's the best possible way I can give back. Michael's dedication and passion to the field of public health are truly inspiring, and we are thrilled to have him here to speak with you today. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Michael to the podium.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you, Leslie, for that warm welcome. And like Leslie said, my name is Michael Estrella, and I'm a third-year PhD candidate in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. My first question, I guess, is, are anyone here from the lab sciences, or is mostly not? So I see 3 hands. Okay, well, that's good anyway, because it's not for lab sciences, I suppose. And as Dean Burke was saying, he's on the practice side, and I'm on the research side. And it's not myself, obviously. It's many students in various labs and various disciplines trying to make an impact in public health with research. And it's that integration between that research and the policy, under one roof is what I believe makes us very special. And I guess applying, maybe being number one is important. And Dean Burke said it, and it's plastered all over the place. And this morning it's like, for the 20th year in a row, Bloomberg School of Public Health is number one. Fantastic. See, but that's what leads you to apply. But what makes you accept and come here, I believe, will be your experiences that you make and the professors that you meet throughout the day. I understand that you don't have much time to really make these connections. In the lab sciences, it's a bit different. You get to come for a whole, for I believe like 2 full days, and you interact with the professors. And I'll say that, Dean Burke, quite a personality, lots of jokes, lots of stories. I would say that's not the exception. I mean, it's definitely not the exception. It's so common. All the professors here, they want to see you succeed and be the best that you possibly can be. And I say that with, as much conviction as possible. And that's what I feel. He says the students are the resource. From a student's perspective, I'm like, the professors are the resource. They're the ones that enable you to succeed and to, reach for your dreams. It's quite nice. And so, the way I kind of came here, I guess, the whole point of this is to give you a different perspective. And, coming from the lab sciences, it's a bit different. But, as Leslie said, my upbringing was a bit, rough, I'd say. And not only am I from Brooklyn, New York, which maybe now it's a nice trendy place to go to, and all these restaurants and things like that. Is there anyone from New York? I guess. Okay, nice. So Burke was doing roll calls for New Jersey. I'll do them for New York. So now it's a very nice and trendy place. But growing up, it was kind of bad. There was very little access to health, and I saw very early on, how is it that, coming from, I guess, a disadvantaged background, your life can easily be punctuated by crises of health, whether it's access, whether it's missing work, missing days at work. That affects you economically. It affects you personally. It touches you, and that's what, I guess, drawing on Dean Burke, that's what drives you to this. It's a passion. It's a love of science. It's a love of research. A love of policy. And a love of public health. And my experience doesn't just it's not just Brooklyn. My parents are from Dominican Republic, actually, and I would go there every summer. And one summer when I was there, I had the misfortune of coming down with dengue, which many of you may know and know of. I don't know if anyone's been affected with it, but it's not very pleasant. Although I was quite young, so maybe my memory doesn't serve me too well. But I definitely did not like it. And coming here to Bloomberg School of Public Health, when I was interviewing, I remember meeting this professor, Jürgen Bosch, who's in our department, and he's tells a very similar story of coming from Africa. His father's German, his mother's Salvadoranian. He was born in Nigeria, quite a diverse background. And it's the same thing. He was actually infected with malaria. And, very few treatment options. There's quinone, that's about it. There's other, at the time it was quinone, but now there's several other treatments. And it's that drive and passion to prevent that from occurring. It happened to you. Let's not let it happen to others. Let's learn from these experiences. Let's invest in research and policy, and get to these communities in need and give them what's necessary to not succumb to these diseases. But that's the personal connection, which I feel many of you may have. You may have one reason or another to want to come here, to want to make a change. But I guess let's lighten it up a bit more. Another consideration when looking at schools of public health is geography. That was, I remember, a big thing for me. Coming from New York, I wanted to pick somewhere that's close to home, somewhere that I can easily get to. And luckily, Baltimore is a Eastern Coast hub, which which can get you to many places, whether East Coast or West Coast. And again, I would say definitely the biggest strength are the professors at the school. They time and again have come and support students, especially taking classes here, and even day-to-day meets. Like, you'll have mentors who will read your thesis, and you'll definitely interact with them day to day. And it's quite a rewarding experience, I must say. And actually, so being that your break is at 9:45, I don't want to take too much longer. So if anyone has questions, I'll be glad to take them at this time. No? All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I do want to just quickly, before we break, we are getting ready to do our Bloomberg seminar series. And what this means is that we will have one session in here, and that will be with Stephen Terrett. And then the next room is Becton Dickinson Lecture Hall, which is right across the hallway. And Bill Eden is going to be presenting there. He's the chair of the Department of Mental Health. And then in Anna Bacher room, which, bear with me here, you're going to make a right out of this room. There's signs and there's staff everywhere, so we'll make sure you get there. Just head down the right outside of this room, and then make a left at the T, and the room's down at the end of the hallway. And that is where Stan Becker is going to be presenting regarding population dynamics and public health, our crowded future. So before we go, and I don't see my buddy Tom out there yet, so what we're going to do is, because Tom thinks that those Hopkins hoodies are so cool, we have a few freebies to give out. And he really likes to be here during this part. There he is! There's my prop. So if you look under the desk part of your chair, and if there's a bluish, greenish, tealish color with a Hopkins sticker on it, it's very official. You're the winner. Look at the chairs next to you. Making you guys work. A little more enthusiasm. Come on up and we'll give you your hoodie. The sessions will start at 10 o'clock, and we'll all be meeting back here after the presentations. So you can pick whichever one you want to attend. Thanks, guys.
See you in class.
All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm delighted to get to introduce Professor Stephen Terrett, who will be presenting this morning's seminar. Professor Terrett's main affiliation is with the Department of Health Policy and Management, with joint faculty appointments in the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, Department of Emergency Medicine, and Department of Pediatrics. He currently directs the Center for Law and the Public's Health. His research interests include the use of law as a tool for protecting the public's health, obesity prevention policy, vaccine policy, law and bioterrorism, general injury prevention policy, alcohol and injuries, and advocacy for the public's health. So, without further delay, here's Stephen Terrett. And you're all set.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. I got to the school here in a hot day in the summer of 1978, when you weren't even in utero then, when I was starting the MPH program. And my background is as a lawyer, but I had been practicing law for 9 or 10 years, so it had been a while since I'd been in school the last time. The last time I was in school was in law school. And when I got here, I knew in my heart that I had maybe at most 6 weeks before both the school and I would realize that this was a really big mistake, that I shouldn't be here, that I was incapable of handling what the school had to offer, and that I would go whining back to my law firm and saying, could you please take me back? I'm sorry, I made a big mistake. My mistake, though, was in actually believing that, because from the first day that I got here, I realized that I had been misplaced in the years prior. I liked being a lawyer. I actually loved being a lawyer. I was a plaintiff's trial lawyer. I loved the work that I did. I loved the clients that I represented. I hoped that I was doing some good for the clients. But all of my clients had been badly hurt in some way, and it was my job to try to get them money to compensate them for the damage that they suffered. It dawned on me after doing that for quite a few years that every single one of my clients would have preferred never to have been damaged rather than get damaged and then get money. So that meant trying to prevent damage to individuals and to populations. And I didn't really know how one would go about trying to prevent damage to individuals and populations until it dawned on me finally that there was a discipline that I had never heard of called public health. But again, it was with trepidation that I came here to the school. But on the first day, starting with the first day that I got here, the people, and by the people I'm talking principally the students, my fellow students, but also the faculty, the people were so incredibly kind. And that should come as no surprise, because public health attracts people who want to be helpful and kind to others. But remember, my previous experience had been in law school, and that was quite different. And when I went to law school, and the place that I went to law school still practiced a very, very strong tradition of sadism. So when I got here, and people first finished laughing after I told them that I was a lawyer, and they would say, well, let us know how we can be of any help, because, you know, you're going to take epidemiology, you're going to take biostatistics. And so when they said, if we can be of any help, please tell us, my initial reaction was what's the scam here? How am I going to get tricked? There were no tricks. It was just such a welcoming, wonderful experience that I knew immediately that I had found my home. I had found my home not only in the discipline of public health, but I had found my home in the school. So people who teach here, like Tom Burke, who's my pal, and I, and all of the other 500 plus faculty members, we all have opportunities to do other things. We get offers to go other places. Sometimes we get offers to go and be deans at other places. Let me tell you, the school, and they don't pay me extra for saying this, I'm telling you this from the heart, actually. The school is an extraordinary place. It's a very, very special place. so yeah, as Tom was saying, and as Mike said before him, it's the largest school of public health. But you're within a unit within the school, and the unit will be different for each one of you depending on what department, what degree program you've been admitted to. But you'll find your home in the unit. And the most exciting thing is that you will find among the students and the faculty members the world's leading expert in whatever topic is of interest to you. And your interests may change over the course of your time here, which is actually a good thing. So it's nice that you can say, well, I came here thinking I was going to be X, but now I believe I'm going to be Y. I want to find the world's leading expert in Y, and that person will be down the hall. And that person will be welcoming of your inquiries. So you should decide where you want to go, and there are many factors in deciding where you want to go. But I got to tell you that this place is special, and it's because it's special that people essentially vote with their feet, as I have, and spend their entire career in this place because of the incredible opportunities that it has to offer. I wanted to talk to you about a number of public health issues: automotive safety, gun violence prevention, which is in the vogue right now, sadly in some ways, but it's a great opportunity for those of us who have been working in gun violence prevention to try to enact policy now. And also, I want to talk to you about food policy, not just obesity, but other aspects of food policy. And as I said, because my background is as a trial lawyer, I want to focus on litigation as a tool for enhancing the public's health. So let me start out with telling you the story of a young woman named Rebecca. When Rebecca was about 18 years of age, she was in a newly acquired Pinto, Ford Pinto, the kind that you see up on the screen there. Rebecca had recently finished high school. She was in the car with some other people. In high school, she'd been a cheerleader. She was going on to some further educational endeavors, and her car got into a frontal collision with another car. If you look at the picture of Rebecca before the collision and Rebecca after the collision, you would not be able to recognize this as the same person. As a result of the collision, Rebecca became brain-damaged, spastic, quadriplegic, unable to take care of herself. So the issue arises when these kinds of incidents happen about how can we prevent them. Motor vehicle-related injuries were a great public health problem in the United States. They still are a major public health problem in the United States, but fortunately the death rate from motor vehicle crashes on the highways in the United States has come down. When I first started here in the School of Public Health, there were about 52,000 people dying each year in motor vehicle crashes. Now there are about 32,000 people. This is one of the great success stories of public health, a great success story of highway safety, and in part, this is a story about how did that happen? How did this success come about? When a car crashes, there is so much kinetic energy that is dissipated. That's how people get injured. So if you remember from your high school, how many people took physics in high school or college? Okay, so you remember from your high school or college physics course that you have inertia of motion. So when the car comes to a rapid stop, when the car hits a tree or another car or a boulder, the occupants inside the car, by inertia of motion, continue to move forward until something stops them. It used to be that what stopped them was if they were the driver getting impaled on a steering wheel, which wasn't designed to be a very protective type of instrument, or if you're a passenger, hitting the dashboard, hitting the knobs of the dashboard, and people would suffer serious and sometimes fatal injuries. What was known is that if we can get people to ride down those decelerative forces in a motor vehicle crash, we would be able to protect them. So even if we can't stop the crash from occurring, we may be able to prevent serious or even fatal injury from occurring, although the car has already crashed, again, by spreading those decelerative forces over time and over space so that they were not terribly injurious to the occupant, the driver or the passenger of the car. So how do you do that? Well, one way that came up was we could put seatbelts on people. That sounds like that would be an easy thing to get done. In fact, it wasn't an easy thing to get done. The original seatbelt rates, once seatbelts were installed in all cars in the United States, were around 10% of people buckling up in cars. And we tried through public service announcements, through all kinds of health education interventions, to convince people that they needed to buckle up in cars, but people were reluctant to do so for whatever reason, and the seatbelt usage rate based on observational studies, went from maybe 10% to 12% to 15%, but hovered around there and didn't continue to rise very much. So we needed to find a different way to get people to be protected in these crashes when they were decelerating because the car had come to a rapid stop. So one way of doing that was to use airbags, to get airbags in cars. You probably, because of your age, you probably think of airbags as always being in cars. That wasn't the case. In the 1980s and before the 1980s, even into the 1990s, you couldn't even buy a car with an airbag in it as an option, even though the first airbag was created around 1953. The patent for the first airbags were in 1953, and it was developed by the car manufacturers through the 1950s, 1960s, into the 1970s. And the car manufacturers thought that airbags were going to save thousands of lives per year. The car manufacturers hadn't yet put airbags into cars. So they went to what's now called the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, a government agency, federal government agency, and they said to the director of NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, you know, airbags would do wonders for highway safety. These are the car manufacturers themselves talking, and there's a transcript of this meeting. And the head of National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, a man named Dr. William Haddon, said, okay, let's see if we can get airbags into cars. Why don't you put them in cars? Let me know if I can help. However, it was just about a year later that there was a change in the presidential administration in Washington. Haddon was out of office. A new person came into the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to direct it, and he issued something called an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, saying to the car manufacturers that starting in 1972, they would be forced by regulation to put airbags in all cars. As soon as the government said that, the car manufacturers backed off. And they said, well, wait a minute, we don't want to do that. We're not sure that this technology is adequately developed. We need to iron the wrinkles, literally and figuratively, out of airbags. So no, don't force us to do this. And that started what the United States Supreme Court later called the automotive industry's waging the regulatory equivalent of war against the airbag. It wasn't really against the airbag, it was against regulation. The automotive industry, as is the case with most industries, didn't want to be regulated. So there was no way that we were seeing airbags get into cars. Congress wouldn't do it because the automotive industry was very powerful and influenced the actions of people in the United States Congress, and the regulatory agencies weren't doing it because sometimes there would be a Democratic administration, they would promulgate a regulation, then it would change to a Republican administration, and they would withdraw the regulation. So the question arose, if we can't get airbags, which were known to be life-saving, into cars through legislation or through regulation, is there another way that the law could be used as a tool to protect the public's health to get airbags into cars? Who knows what the three branches of government are? Who remembers this from 7th grade civics class? What are the three branches of government?
Executive, legislative, judicial.
Okay, so the judicial branch had not yet been tapped. The suggestion, therefore, was made, and it was made through a magazine. I wouldn't call it a journal, a magazine called Trial. And Trial was the magazine of what was then called the Association of Trial Lawyers of America, ATLA. ATLA had a membership of 60,000 plaintiff trial lawyers. The plaintiff's trial lawyer is the one who represents the person who gets hurt. The defendant's trial lawyer is the one in automotive litigation who represents Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, the automotive company. So in this magazine, which is read by the 60,000 plaintiff trial lawyers, 60,000 plaintiff trial lawyers hoping that someone will come into their office, walk in, and actually their real hope, I used to be this person, real hope is that someone will get pushed in a wheelchair and you will be able to compensate that person for the damages done to that person. The suggestion was made to these 60,000 plaintiff trial lawyers that when they have the client come in who's paralyzed, who's brain damaged, who's facially disfigured from scarring from going through the windshield of a car, not only should they be suing the manufacturer of the driver of the other car, but they should be suing the manufacturer of the car that their client was in for failing to put airbags into the car. So the first case that was brought after this article was published, and it was strategically published in Trial Magazine specifically for this purpose, the first case that was brought by a lawyer named Bill Smith in Birmingham, Alabama, who was representing Rebecca, the woman that I told you about, the 18-year-old woman. And 10 days into trial, Ford Motor Company, the manufacturer of the Pinto that Rebecca was in, Ford Motor Company settled the case by the payment of $1.8 million. This was quite some time ago. This was at a time when $1.8 million was a lot of money. Now, one thing you need to know about plaintiff trial lawyers is that the reason that they went to law school, there are two reasons that they went to law school. Number one is they took the first semester of organic chemistry and decided they would no longer go to be pre-med students. The second reason is that they're not, as a group, particularly quantitatively skilled, so they weren't going to become epidemiologists. The one area in which they do have quantitative skills is they have a remarkable agility in dividing a number by 3. The reason that they have that agility is because they work on something called the contingent fee scale, and they get 1/3 of whatever the settlement or the verdict is. So $1.8 million, that was Ford settlement. Divide that by 3, it's a hard calculation to do, but it seems like that's a lot of money for the fee for the lawyer. So as a result of the settlement, there was a lot of publicity. There was publicity among plaintiff trial lawyers, but there was publicity to the general public. So I got to go on the Today Show to talk about it because I was the person, or one of the two people who wrote the article. So there became then a tidal wave of litigation against car manufacturers for failing to offer an airbag or failing to regularly equip cars with airbags. There was so much litigation that in 1985, on December 31st, 1985, when Ford Motor Company filed its required forms with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, Ford Motor Company said that that year, for 1 year, they had pending against it in airbag litigation claims the amount of $1.1 billion. Coincidentally or not, that was the year that Ford Motor Company decided to offer airbags as options in cars. So the thesis or the hypothesis that we were working on was that if you transfer the cost of these injuries back to the manufacturer who's able to make the changes in the product, rather than always telling people, drive carefully so you don't get into an accident. If you transfer the cost back to the manufacturer, you're providing the manufacturer with an adequate financial incentive to invest in prevention rather than to pay the penalties of neglect. And that became important to people in public health, because that was the first time that there was actual proof on an anecdotal basis that litigation could successfully be used as a tool to protect the public's health by making policy through the judicial branch of government. Normally policy is made through the legislative branch or the executive branch, but this is policy being made through the judicial branch of government. Then the next question that arose is, if we can make this kind of policy to create safer products with regard to cars, to reduce the incidence of devastating injuries and deaths in motor vehicle crashes, then are we able to do it for other products? And that's when we decided to think about guns. So the leading cause of death in the United States at the time was motor vehicle crashes. I told you that when I first got here, there were 52,000 motor vehicle crash fatalities in the United States. That came down to 32,000, as I mentioned to you, but hovering around that same number of 32,000 were firearm-related deaths in the United States. So not as big a problem in terms of mortality as where at first motor vehicles are, but actually now they vie for number one and number two in leading causes of injury death in the United States. So I want to tell you about a young boy named Ryan. Ryan, when he was about 12 or 13 years of age, was in school on one Friday, like today, and his school was scheduled to get out early. There was no emergency or anything like that. It was just a teacher's conference day or whatever it was. And Ryan's mother even knew that he was going to get out early for school. So when school closed down early that Friday afternoon, it was a nice day, Ryan went to his house with his friend Stephen. And he's hanging around as 12 or 13-year-old boys do, just goofing around, when the phone rings. And it was Ryan's mother calling him, as she would call him every afternoon just to check in. She worked outside of the home, so she was calling to ask how his day was in school. So he picks up the phone, and he says, hello. She says, hi, Ryan, it's your mom. He says, hi. And the mom says, so I remember that you were getting out early today. What are you up to? And Ryan says to her, I'm here in the house with Stephen, and we're just playing around. There's a pause, and then Ryan's mother says to him, you know, Ryan, I've discussed this with you in the past, that I'm not comfortable with you being home alone with Stephen in the house. There was just something about this kid, Stephen, that didn't sit well with Ryan's mother. So Ryan responds by saying, You know, you're right. I'm sorry. You've told me that. Okay, I apologize. We'll leave. So they leave, and they go to Stephen's house where they're home alone. And after a little time passes, Stephen says to Ryan, come with me, I want to show you something. They go upstairs. They go into Stephen's parents' bedroom. They walk over to the closet that Stephen's father uses. Stephen opens the closet. He reaches up to the shelf where Stephen's father has sweaters and other things, and he pulls down a Beretta pistol, a Beretta semi-automatic pistol. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with guns, but is there anyone here who doesn't fully understand the difference between a pistol and a revolver? Or do you all know that? No, some of you don't know that. Okay, so good, because I made the slides, and they should be slides made, should be slides used. So let me explain that to you. So this is a revolver, and the revolver, if you watch old cowboy movies, this is what they have on cowboy movies. The revolver has, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I should not be permitted to show slides. The revolver has this revolving cylinder, hence the name revolver, and generally it has 6 holes in it. That's why it used to be called 6-shooter in the cowboy movies. And you put a bullet in, when you load the gun, you put a bullet in each one of these holes. And when you shoot a bullet, then the revolver, the cylinder revolves, and it's ready for the next shot to be taken. And again, it generally holds 6 bullets. Now, a pistol is different. A pistol looks like this. A pistol is what you see in present-day movies, because pistols have essentially replaced revolvers as the gun of choice for people who buy guns. And pistols have the bullets in this kind of thing, which is called a magazine or a clip. That's what stores the ammunition. And these are in the news a lot currently, because there are some magazines or clips that can hold 30 bullets. There are some that can hold 100 bullets. You could buy these as accessories for guns. So if you listen to the news about, for instance, the shooting in the theater in Aurora, or the shooting in the elementary school in Newtown, Pennsylvania, or many other mass shootings, the people frequently will have magazines or clips that are much greater in size than this. So this clip has probably a capacity for about 10 bullets, more than the revolver, but less than the 30 or 100. So you'll read about legislative efforts now to legislatively limit the capacity of a magazine to 10, or New York passed a law recently limiting it to, if I remember correctly, to 7. So this magazine or clip fits up inside this butt end of the gun here, and that's what distinguishes that, and some other things, are what distinguishes a revolver from a pistol. So Stephen reaches up, brings down this semi-automatic Beretta pistol from his father's closet. Beretta is a manufacturer that is more than 500 years old. It was originally, still is, in Italy, but there's a Beretta USA. That's right here in Maryland, Accokeek, Maryland. So they make many of these guns. I've gone to the Beretta factory to visit them. It's actually quite an enterprise. So they're pushing out of the loading platform at the Beretta factory, but also at other manufacturers' factories throughout the United States. They push out literally millions of these kinds of new handguns each year into the stream of commerce, and those handguns end up in the pockets and the hands of people. Some of those people you probably should be worried about that those guns are ending up in those hands. But we're not talking about crime right now. We're talking about gun design. So what happens is these young boys, and we know something about the epidemiology of these kinds of incidents that I'm describing to you now, that young boys, particularly boys around 12 or 13 years of age, are at highest risk. These are not freak accidents. These are foreseeable events with an epidemiology to them. So they take the gun, and Stephen, whose father has this gun, pushes a button on the Beretta pistol, and it releases the magazine. So Stephen puts the magazine up on the shelf in the closet. And now with the gun without the magazine, they take in their hands and they go outside and they're playing with the gun, just horsing around. And at one point, they're standing in the driveway of Stephen's parents' house, and Ross, and I'm sorry, Ryan, I don't know why he's doing that, but he's kneeling down a little bit, and Stephen takes the gun. People hold these guns now this way instead of this way. That's how the bad guys do it on the movies. And Stephen has the gun pointed down because Ryan is kneeling. And knowing that he took the magazine out of the gun, took the bullets out of the gun, he pulls the trigger, believing that there are no consequences to doing that. What he didn't know, he knew a little bit about guns, but he didn't know enough about guns. What he didn't know is that there's still what's called a round in the chamber. So while the magazine containing the bullets is out, there's still one bullet left in the gun. So he pulls the trigger, and the gun goes off, and the bullet entered Ryan's face just to the left of his nose and took a downward path. So there you have Ryan laying in the driveway, exsanguinating in the driveway. Stephen goes insane. He's just shot his best friend. Stephen runs into the house to call 911, but actually before he calls 911, he runs back upstairs to his parents' bedroom, and he puts the gun back on the shelf in the closet. Then he comes downstairs, he calls 911. You can listen to the tape, and he's wild, screaming, and he says, "My friend is just shot. My friend is shot in the driveway of my house." And the 911 operator is saying, okay, calm down. How did this happen? And Stephen, he doesn't want to get in trouble. So he says, I think the shot came from behind the woods and behind the house. So all of a sudden, every police car, every ambulance, fire trucks, and there's even a helicopter now over his house looking for a sniper. And a policeman starts to talk to Stephen and asks him about the details again, and realizes that Stephen is lying about this, and Stephen readily then admits that it was he who shot the gun. So they scoop up Ryan, they take him to the hospital, and they call his parents, and his parents get to the hospital in time to sign the consent form allowing the surgeon to harvest Ryan's organs because he's brain dead, and maybe his organs will be of value to somebody else. These are tragedies, and you read about them in newspapers, and again, you read about them as freak accidents, but they happen time and time and time again. If you work in the field of gun violence prevention, one of the hardest things about it is you become the repository for these kinds of stories. They happen. People send you the newspaper articles, the Google News articles nowadays about it. So if they happen time and time again, if they're foreseeable, then the question is, how do you make them preventable? Can you make them preventable? Is there anything that can be done? Well, there are things that can be done. There are ways that guns can be changed to reduce the likelihood that this would ever happen again. One way is to have a loaded chamber indicator in a gun. So a loaded chamber indicator tells you if the gun is loaded or not. It tells you if there's this round in the chamber. You know, I used to say when I would teach classes about this, would you ever buy a camera that doesn't tell you whether it has film in it? And I realized not too long ago that I can't do that anymore, because all people do is they take pictures with their iPhones and you don't even know what film used to be. So there must be other analogies, like would you buy a car that had didn't have a gas gauge on it that told you how much gas it was? It would cost less than $1 to put a loaded chamber indicator on a gun like the one that Stephen used. They have been around for more than a century, but they're not on most guns. Why are they not on most guns? Well, you'd have to ask the gun manufacturers that, but they don't have to be on guns because we in the United States don't regulate the design of guns. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, which regulates the design of most products, does not have the authority to regulate the design of guns. It's not only the loaded chamber indicator that would be helpful, but also another technology that exists and has existed for more than a century and costs less than $1 is something called a magazine disconnect device. And the magazine disconnect device is something built into the gun so that if you remove the magazine from that butt end, the grip of the gun, as Stephen did, then even if there is a round in the chamber physically, you can't discharge that. It won't work. The gun is designed not to do it. The gun in question, in this case with Stephen and Ryan, did not have either a magazine disconnect device or a loaded chamber indicator. We don't regulate, as I told you a moment ago, the design of guns. Well, what about litigation? Could we use litigation? Could we take a lesson from what we did about getting airbags in cars and sue the gun manufacturers? So yes, I spent a bunch of time talking with Ryan's family, and ultimately they sued Beretta. And with these kinds of lawsuits, when they get settled, if they do get settled, they generally get settled with something called a gag order. So what that means is the company will say, here's a check. Notice, a very large check. We could give this to you in settlement of the lawsuit, you being the family of Ryan in this case. But here's the condition. You're not allowed to talk about how much money we gave you. You're not allowed to talk about any of the other terms of the settlement. Terms such as, we'll only settle the case if you change the design of guns in some way. So with that case, although I know the outcome of that case, I'm not allowed to tell you the outcome of that case because I would be in contempt of court if I did that, because this case was gag ordered. So for example, if the outcome of this case changed the design of Beretta guns, I can't tell you that. Can't tell you. That would be wrong of me to do that. So it looked like we were going to be able to reduce some gun deaths by changing the design of guns through the use of litigation. It looked like the same thing was going to happen with guns that happened with motor vehicles. Until one day I got a call from someone I knew quite well, whose title was Director of Research, although that was not really what he did, Director of Research for the National Rifle Association. I knew this guy well because we would go to meetings together all the time and we would be pitted against each other. But also when I teach my classes here, I used to invite him in to come and give talks to the students, just so the students would know what you're up against when you're trying to make change in the world of public health. So this man, whose name is Dr. Paul Blackman, he's retired now, called. I pick up the phone. Hello? He says, Steve, Paul, "Hey, Paul, what do you want?" And Paul says, "Gotcha." And I say, "What do you mean, gotcha?" And he tells me, "We're going to get a law passed by Congress that confers immunity from litigation on the gun industry." And I said, "Paul, I know the NRA is strong, but you're never going to be able to get that done." And he says, "Watch me." And he got it done. So Congress passed what's called the Protection and Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, and it was signed into law by President George W. Bush. So now, in most instances, not all, but in most instances, you can't successfully sue gun manufacturers for horrible outcomes with guns because of the power of the National Rifle Association. So here, where we thought we had a great use again of litigation, it turned out that that was short-lived because of this act of Congress. Let me turn then to the last example, and I'll illustrate this with the spicy buffalo chicken melt. So this isn't about cars, this isn't about guns, this is about food that we all eat. And while we could talk about the caloric content of food for this example, I'm going to choose to talk not about the caloric content, but instead let me talk to you about salt for a few minutes. And let me quickly run through with you some facts about salt. So blood pressure, high blood pressure is related to strokes and heart attacks. A lot of you probably know all of this that I'm going to tell you, but let me repeat it to make sure. And high blood pressure is a very prevalent problem and public health problem in the United States. 65 million Americans have high blood pressure. Another 45 million Americans have what's called pre-hypertension. And for some groups, they're even at greater risk for high blood pressure. Those groups, including actually a very large percent of the population. So all African Americans are at greater risk for high blood pressure. All people who are over the age of 50 are at greater risk for high blood pressure, as well as some other groups. And there's an enormous cost to hypertension in the United States. We spend more than $15 billion each year on blood pressure medications. And salt is very closely related to hypertension or high blood pressure, and it's the sodium in salt. So salt is NaCl, sodium chloride. I'm talking about the sodium part, not the chloride part right now. So consumption of sodium increases blood pressure, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. We consume as a population more and more sodium over time, and most of the sodium that we ingest comes from processed prepared foods eaten outside of the home. Less than 10% of the salt that we consume, the sodium that we consume, comes from using a salt shaker at the table. It's already inside the food that we're eating, especially when we're eating out in restaurants. Now, the recommended daily allowance for sodium for healthy young adults such as you is about 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. For people like me, who happen to be greater than 50 years of age, I'm supposed to not have more than 1,500 milligrams, or African American people aren't supposed to have more than 1,500 milligrams a day. Question is, how much sodium do we actually ingest in the United States, and do we even know that we're ingesting it? So there are some restaurant items that contain much more than we're supposed to eat a day, and restaurants don't let us know that, and they don't have to. They're not required to let us know that. So let me go back to the spicy buffalo chicken melt. Not to pick on Denny's, but this is from Denny's. But I'll confess to you that I ate last night because my wife has a very strong addiction to Chili's buffalo wing sauce. I ate in Chili's. I don't even want to know how much sodium I ingested. So it's not just Denny's, it's many restaurants. So for this meal, which is essentially a lunch meal, the sandwich and the fries, there's about 4,800 milligrams of sodium. So for me, who's not supposed to have more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium in a day, this one meal, were I to eat this meal at Denny's, is more than 3 times than I should eat in one day, 3 times the sodium than I should eat in one day. So what are you going to do about that? How are you going to address that? Well, again, you could look at legislation, you could look at regulation. The person whose name adorns the school and whose portrait is up the stairs, Michael Bloomberg, has done a lot of work in New York City through legislation, through regulation, but that's not always effective. If you read the newspaper this week, you'll see that while he wanted to do something about the caloric content of sugar-sweetened beverages and how much sugar-sweetened beverages you can get in one serving, and he passed local law in New York City. That law was struck down by a court earlier this week. So legislation and regulation have their difficulties. The question becomes, can you do something? Can you use litigation to try to address this? The difficulty with using litigation with regard to food, whether you're talking about food that's obesogenic, food that has so many calories in it that it's likely to contribute to the epidemic of obesity, and more particularly childhood obesity in the United States and elsewhere in the world, or whether you're talking about litigation dealing with the sodium content of food, there's some special problems. Number one is, who's the defendant? And it's different than a car crash or a gunshot wound, because in the car crash, you know, okay, Rebecca was in a Pinto, or with the gun, you can know Stephen's father had this Beretta. But with food, sometimes you eat in Denny's, and another night you eat in Chili's, and the next time you go to your grandma's house, and who knows what she's doing with that soup pot. So it's not that you can point the finger very clearly at one responsible defendant. And then even more difficult is the question of, can causation be readily proven? Can you say that this person has hypertension and this person has had a stroke because of the hypertension, because he ate the spicy buffalo chicken sandwich in Denny's, as opposed to all of the other places that he ate, all of the other places that he got exposed to excessive amounts of sodium. So we have a real challenge before us to see if we can use litigation as a tool to protect the public's health with regard to obesity, with regard to hypertensive diseases, because we consume too much salt. I want to end by telling you the one thing that doesn't involve litigation, which is, it always was of concern to me. How many minutes do I have now? 2. Okay, good. I can do it. It was always of concern to me that in law schools, they have these things called clinics, because law schools realized decades ago that they were graduating people who, now that they're graduating, knew a lot about the substantive aspects of the law, but they didn't know how to be lawyers. And it worried me that we might be doing the same thing in schools of public health. When I finished my MPH degree, man, I had learned a lot during my time as an MPH student, but I thought that it would have been borderline criminal for the school to release me as a public health person, because I didn't know how to actually practice public health. I think, to its credit, the school felt the same way, so they offered me a job as a faculty member where I wouldn't hurt anyone other than students, but I wouldn't be hurting the general public, and I learned more public health over the years as a faculty member. But we established, for the first time ever in any school of public health, we established the Johns Hopkins Clinic on law and policy as relates to public health. And this academic year, the one that we're still in, we ran the clinic for the first time. And the problem that I chose for the students who enrolled in the clinic was salt in food. And we narrowed it down because that was too big an issue. So we narrowed it down to salt that's being served in assisted living and independent living places in Maryland for elderly people. Because my mother, before she died, was living in an independent living place, and she'd always say, "Stevie, my food is so salty. Can't you do something about it?" So I thought, in tribute to my mother, I would have the clinic do something like that. Earlier this week, we recorded, when I say we, the students, recorded a presentation based upon 2 terms of work that they did. I am so proud of what the students did. The students have just been fantastic, as is always the case with students in the school, and thus we come back to you making your selection as to where you want to go to school. The students did a fabulous job in that they studied all of this. They studied the biology, the medicine about it. They studied the epidemiology of hypertension. They studied regulation. They looked at what other states in the United States and what other countries are doing. And they came up with a plan that we should have a regulation here in Maryland that limits the amount of sodium that's in food being served to elderly people in independent and assisted living. And on Monday, I'll send the DVD of that recording to the Maryland Secretary of Health and Mental Hygiene, Dr. Josh Sharfstein, who's expecting this because we've talked about it with him. I don't know the outcome, but if I had to guess the outcome, as a direct result of what the students did in this clinic, there'll be a regulation soon in Maryland about how much sodium there can be in the food that's served to elderly people in assisted and independent living. This is public health practice at work. This is actually going out and making change. This is what we expect of our students, and this is what our students do every single year. And we look forward to seeing you here, and you can be part of this, whether it's in health policy, whether it's in epidemiology, whether it's in microbiology, environmental health, mental health, health behavior, whatever department you're affiliated with, or the MPH program. You will be doing these types of things. You'll be changing the world, and it's a tribute to you that you're able to do this. And thank you very much. Yeah.
We're going to, we have about 10, 8, 7, sorry, I lied. 10, 9, 8, 7. 7 minutes until everybody's going to come back in here so we can move on. But Steve will take some questions. If anybody has them, you can either ask them, we can be formal, or you can come on up and chat with them as well.
Any questions, comments, complaints? One thing you have to learn when you're a student in this school is you can't be shy. You got to be willing to speak up because it's expected of you, and essentially that's part of the learning process that everyone goes through. So in law school, if we were there, I would have a class list and I would know who's seated in what seat, and I would call on people. We don't call on people in the school. The reason we don't call on people is because this is a secret that I'm about to reveal to you. In the admissions process, people who tend toward obsessive compulsive personalities have a preference in getting admitted. So we know that you're not shy in retiring, that you're willing to speak up, so we don't call on people. Does anybody have a question? Even someone who didn't attend the lecture, like you. No? Yes.
So my question is about current gun policy.
Yep.
What is a realistic goal with what's happening in the Senate and maybe congressional?
Oh, I was told not to do this. I'm only allowed to stand here. Sorry. Okay. The question was, with current gun policy, what's a realistic goal? I don't have the time to answer that question fully, but we're going to see changes made in gun policy at both the federal and the state level. Those changes are going to involve how people acquire guns, whether there are universal background checks or not. But also, as we were talking about here, those changes are going to involve the design of guns. So on today's Friday, I spent Wednesday afternoon, and I'm not telling you this to try to pat myself on the back, but so you know the kind of work that goes on in the school. I spent all of Wednesday afternoon with the Attorney General of the United States, who was ordered by President Obama to look into design changes of guns because of work that's done here in our Center for Gun Policy and Research in the Department of Health Policy and Management. So what an opportunity to have an afternoon with the Attorney General of the United States saying what we can do and how we can accomplish doing that to change the rules both at the federal level and in the state level about the design of guns so incidents like this and other types of incidents don't happen. So we will be seeing changes in gun policy in the United States. They won't be the entire wish list that we've developed here in our Center for Gun Policy and Research, but actually it's an historic time for changes in gun policy. We're very optimistic about it. The saddest thing, though, is the price that we had to pay in order to see these changes made. And when I was talking to the Attorney General, Eric Holder of the United States, he was telling us about how he went to visit the Sandy Hook Elementary School and after the shooting, and he was looking at the stains, the blood stains on the carpeting, and he noticed that there were like little tufts of carpeting, and he was wondering why are there these tufts of carpeting? That's where bullets bounced off of the carpet, and he talked about the angels who died, these 20 little children who died. So again, the price that we had to pay to see changes in gun policy is horrendous and unacceptable. But on the other hand, when you want to make change to benefit the population, to benefit the public's health, you have to be ready for when your time comes. And this is the time for changes in gun policy, and that's why we will see changes in gun policy. So thank you very much. Okay, I think my time is up. Thanks.
If anybody needs to use the restroom or whatever, we have a couple more minutes. So feel free. You can talk. You can. Yeah, thank you very much.
this country. So from the moment I went to...
Sorry about that. You're absolutely right. Wow.
So I'll go ahead. I'll introduce this real quick. This is a video that's put on about our injury prevention, and it's actually celebrating the 25th anniversary for our Center for Injury Research and Policy. So last year was actually the anniversary, but I love this video, and I think it really demonstrates a different side of what we do here. And these videos are just small glimpses, as Mike said earlier, of everything that we are about. Okay, so I will leave now. But anyway, enjoy it. There's obviously lots more, but we'd like to share.
One of the biggest problems I looked at early in my career was that of little kids in cars. I was working in the medical examiner's office. We'd see the bodies that came in from crashes, and perhaps the most tragic were the little kids and the babies traveling in their mother's arms, unrestrained. Nobody was doing research in this area. We saw a need for a center where we would have colleagues doing good research together that would help to prevent injury. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention agreed with us, and they funded us to start the center. That was 1987, and we haven't stopped since.
So we've done a lot of research in the past that described what happens after you've suffered a very severe injury. And what we found was the trauma surgeons do a great job of putting people back together. And yet, in the end, trauma patients and their families needed support for not just the physical consequences, but also the psychological consequences from a traumatic event. Post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression are all very common consequences from a severe injury. So we worked closely with the American Trauma Society and some of the leading trauma centers around the country to build the Trauma Survivors Network, a program that helps injury survivors connect and learn from each other. Just having somebody who knows what they've been through makes a huge difference. We need to get the Trauma Survivors Network running in every trauma center around the country.
My mommy is having a fight. Stop it! Mommy!
Okay, don't cry. We're gonna send the police.
Okay.
It's a simple questionnaire, 11 questions that police ask victims when they respond to a call for domestic violence. If the victims answer affirmatively to certain questions, the red flag goes off. They're in high danger. It's a relatively simple assessment. The officer can immediately connect the victim to services that could help save their life. We're collecting this data to both evaluate and improve the program so that other jurisdictions that are interested in implementing the program can use it effectively. We're connecting research to real life.
We care about keeping kids safe. No one ever wants to interact with a family in the emergency room after their child's been injured. But it's our job to help those injury prevention messages resonate in a way with families before the event.
We're gonna learn about safety.
The Mobile Safety Center is basically a 40-foot truck where we've designed the inside of it to look like a common home. For instance, we take a normal-looking stove and point out the hidden injury hazards to a parent and to young children. Not to freak them out, not to scare them, but to educate them so that they can properly protect their children.
Do you touch that? You never touch any kind of fire.
Well, it's a great tool to teach families how to keep their homes safe for their children.
It's a model that we started here and is being replicated all over the world.
The center began very simply with one pioneering epidemiologist by the name of Sue Baker.
We've accomplished so much, and I'm just proud of what we've done.
We've changed laws, we've encouraged people to find new ways to protect themselves, and we've really changed the culture of safety. You can immediately see the impact of your work on the lives of real people. We're also very committed to training students as part of our core mission. They will be the ones who will know how to solve the injury problems of the future. Trying to prevent fires and burns, trying to find new ways to reduce distracted driving, trying to help older adults not fall in their homes, trying to find ways to make our neighborhoods and streets safer.
We're talking about something that's a health problem for almost every family. Injury causes more lost productive years of life than any disease, much more than cancer or heart disease.
So it's not just about telling people to be careful, it's about working together to find ways to solve the problem.
Oh, I keep losing the mic. So we're going to be moving on. We're going to be hearing now a little bit about Baltimore, about what life is about here. We're going to hear from some students in just a few minutes as well. But I first would like to introduce the director and founder of SOURCE, which stands for our Student Outreach Resource Center. It's a tri-school organization between the School of Public Health, School of Nursing, and School of Medicine. Mindy is going to talk to us about that program. And then also, she's a native to Baltimore, so she's going to give you the inside scoop to what it's all about. So anyway, Mindy?
Good morning, everyone. Morning. All right, so just real quickly, how many of you are from Baltimore? Couple of people. Maryland? Okay. Everybody else, welcome to Baltimore. As Leslie said, I'm a native of Baltimore, so that's why they asked me to come forward and talk a little bit about life in Baltimore. But I also run this organization called SOURCE. As Leslie mentioned, it's the Community Service and Service Learning Center for the whole health professional campus. And so much of what I'm going to be speaking about today, we actually have available on our website, so I encourage you to take down the URL or jot down our email address if you have other questions. So the main focus of SOURCE is really to encourage our students, faculty, and staff to collaborate with some of our local public health organizations right here in Baltimore. And we only focus on organizations in Baltimore. That's what we do through SOURCE. And there's a number of reasons why we encourage people to go out and work in these organizations. For one, we're going to give you a lot of opportunities to take the theories that you're learning about in the classroom and apply it to a real-world setting right here in Baltimore City. I can tell you that our network of nonprofits that we work with count on our students, faculty, and staff to work with them. They're actually, every year around orientation time, are like, when are the new students coming? We're ready to bring them on board. This is also a great way for you to learn more about the new community where you'll likely be living if you come and attend classes here. And of course, if it's your new community, you have an opportunity to make a difference right here in our own backyard. Now, I want to say that Baltimore is not unlike other cities throughout the United States. I've just listed here a couple of the health challenges that we focus on here in Baltimore. High rates of diabetes, hypertension, obesity, of course, all kinds of substance abuse are issues. And from the 2010 census, we saw that about 15% of Americans were living below that poverty line. Well, the communities immediately surrounding this campus, which we call basically Middle East Baltimore, that statistic of 29% of East Baltimore residents live below the poverty rate is even more alarming. Now, one of the things that SOURCE does is that we partner with about 100 community-based organizations right here. Again, our only focus is Baltimore City. We do that purposely because there are a lot of needs in our backyard as well as a lot of assets, and also because with our quarter system, a lot of people don't necessarily have additional time to do a lot of travel, so we focus our attentions right here in the backyard. And with the 100 organizations that we work with, these are just some of the categories of organizations that we work with. So whether you have a particular population that you wish to serve, or a particular health topic that you want to work on, you can likely find an organization within our network. And I encourage you to take a look at our source website, because we have our live active directory that tells you a little bit about all the different organizations that we partner with in the city. Now, our involvement opportunities are really vast. We do everything under the sun to get our students, faculty, and staff engaged in the Baltimore community. So there's just standard volunteer positions where you're just volunteering your time. There's no credit, there's no money, but you're having a wonderful experience. We do coordinate a lot of internships, and some of the degree programs that have required internships, we help to put those internship opportunities available, or if you're just looking for internships to basically gain some professional skills. If you're doing a capstone project, if you're an MPH student, we connect students that way, as well as students that have requirements to do a practicum. And then we also coordinate a number of federal work study positions, and all of our federal work study positions are positions that put you out into the Baltimore community, and you have to be eligible for financial aid for that program. And Source also hires 3 work study students in our office as well, so you have an opportunity to work with us. We do everything in terms of one-time opportunities, short-term projects, as well as long-term engagement opportunities that relate to your academic studies. Oftentimes we show up in a number of courses that we consider to be service learning or a type of experiential learning course, where the faculty member and us, we've worked together to understand what are the objectives of the course, what are some of the deliverables that you can offer, and we partner you with community organizations to basically, again, really apply theory to practice. We also have a whole range of programming that we do throughout the year. At the very beginning of the academic school year, when everybody is on campus, we have our community involvement fair where all of our community partners come to campus. We also, in early October, will host our Baltimore Week. And this is an opportunity to highlight different issues that we're working on in Baltimore. We do a lot of community service throughout that week, and we also bring in a lot of speakers from the community. It's a great way of introducing you to more about Baltimore and not just what you've seen from The Wire. We do tours of the community and basically tour to see where are all these community-based organizations that we work with. What are the issues they're working on? Who are the leaders in the community? And it's a great way to find out what's going on. We're gearing up for April. It's our really busy season because we have National Volunteer Week, we give out our Source Community Service Awards, and we have a lot of activities that we put together with the departments as well as a lot of the student groups on campus as well. This was just a little touch of what we do through Source. So I really encourage you, if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in working on, that you can stay connected to our office. If you'd like, you can subscribe to what we call our Source Weekly Service Group. It's a newsletter that comes out by email every single Tuesday, and it lists the latest engagement opportunities from our community partners. And of course, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, so you can connect with us through social media as well. So the rest of my talk today is really going to focus on Baltimore. And I'm going to cover a little bit of dialect, famous Baltimoreans, transportation, entertainment, shopping, where to live, and all that other good stuff. And at the conclusion of my remarks, I'm going to bring up 6 panelists, some of our current students that live in different neighborhoods throughout Baltimore City, and give you an opportunity to do some real questions and answers. So let me start with our dialect. So I'm born and raised in Baltimore. Some of the folks that you will meet here, you're going to find have some strong words that we say a little bit differently. For example, we often call the city Balmer and not Baltimore, and the state Maryland, Balmer, Maryland. And when the weather starts to get warm, hopefully really soon, we start talking about, hey, hon, when are you going to go down the ocean, hon? And what we're saying is, are you going to go down to the ocean, which is Ocean City, Maryland, where we tend to vacation? Hun. If you are greeted by somebody, whether it's a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant, this is what can I get for you, hun? It's just how we greet people. It's short for honey, and it can also be used to describe a certain set of people. So these ladies here pictured with the big beehive hairdos, we might consider them to be huns. And the cool thing about Baltimore, we have a city that's filled with different neighborhoods that have completely different personalities. And one of our neighborhoods is called Hamden, and Hamden has a big Hun Fest every single June. That's a couple of days long, and everybody dresses up like a Hun. Old folks, young folks, animals. It's a really fun event. Okay, because we're on a medical campus, oftentimes when you're in your classes, you might hear something go by that's called an ambulance. We tend to add additional letters or just kind of combine syllables in some of our words. So when we have to get our clothes clean. You might have to iron your clothes or wash our clothes. And then when we talk about our beloved baseball team, we say the O's or the Orioles, which is actually the Baltimore Orioles. Now, Baltimore is famous for a lot of things, including some of the wonderful people that have come out of our fine city. This, again, is just a quick snapshot of some of the famous people. Every time that I do Visitors Day, I've got people emailing me, you forgot this person, you forgot that. I know, I can't list them all. We don't have time. But just to give you a sense, we have lots of artists, politicians, a lot of business leaders that have come out of the community, and some of these people here you've probably heard of at some point in time. Another great thing about the Bloomberg School of Public Health is that we are closely connected to politicians and key leaders in the state of Maryland. Some folks that are right here in Baltimore and some folks in Annapolis or down in DC. So it is not uncommon to see these folks coming to our classrooms and giving lectures and talks and collaborating with our faculty and staff. So you see here Governor O'Malley and our Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, our Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, and then the City Council President Jack Young, and then our Health Commissioner who came here a couple years ago from New York City, Dr. Barbeau. And all of these people are constantly in and out of our doors and working with us. Now, to know a little bit more about Baltimore, it is not a huge city, and we have decent public transportation, but not great public transportation. But one of the nice things about Hopkins is that Hopkins is the state's largest employer, and we happen to have this pretty elaborate free shuttle system that goes throughout the city. So a lot of our students, faculty, and staff live along that shuttle route and just utilize that for their commute back and forth to work. So there's a shuttle system that goes between this campus and our undergraduate Homewood campus. There's an Eastern campus. We have a campus in Mount Washington at Green Springs Station, and that, again, free, just connecting our different divisions. And then we also have what we call the Calltown shuttle. There's about 10 or more colleges and universities in Baltimore City that we call the College Town Network. And College Town has this shuttle that connects the different universities. We don't have a shuttle that connects right to this campus, but it connects to the undergraduate Homewood campus. So again, another way to get around our city for free. There's other options to get around the city as well. We have the Metro or the light rail. Some of you probably came in via train on the Amtrak, and our shuttle goes from the train station, from Penn Station here. Various bus lines and the Dash shuttle that connects, and those are free, the Dash shuttles. And then we have our Charm City Circulator, which has a number of different routes throughout the city, and the Circulator is also free, and that connects to our campus as well, so it gets you to all parts of the city. We are not far from the airport. We also have, what's really fun is a water taxi that goes throughout the harbor. And then we also have zip car access. So if you don't have a car, but you sometimes want to use a car and you want to rent a zip car, we have that's connected at Hopkins as well. So a couple of different transportation options for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about entertainment. There is a ton to do in Baltimore, and our art scene is just booming and busting at the seams. If you're interested in exploring some of the galleries or museums, again, these are just a couple of the ones that I felt like highlighting. The picture that you see on the top there, that's the American Visionary Art Museum. And on the very bottom is the Reginald Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture. And it's a fantastic museum. And if you're interested in theater or concerts, to see live music, to see plays, or even to go to the movies, there's a ton to do throughout the city. On the top is the Creative Alliance at the Patterson, and on the bottom is on the west side of town, and that's the Hippodrome, and that's where we have a lot of the Broadway shows that are coming into town, and that was redone a couple years ago, and it's just magnificent. The other great thing about Baltimore, as I said, we have this community of neighborhoods that have different kind of cultures and traits. And that is that we have a lot of different community-oriented events that go on throughout the city and throughout the year. And so what's fun is we have a lot of free events, particularly in the fall. We have a big Fall Fest Baltimore throughout October. A lot of the museums are free, and we're constantly sending out to students, this is what you can do for free this weekend. The picture on the top here is a kinetic sculpture race that goes throughout downtown and goes into the water as well, and there's a big race. And then on the bottom is, again, back in Hamden around the holiday time, they have a 34th Street, so they have the big miracle on 34th Street. So lots of fun things to do in Baltimore. Of course, I have to talk about shopping. Shopping is decent in Baltimore. It's no New York City, of course, but we do have a lot of malls and local boutiques that you can get to within the city or in the surrounding counties of Baltimore. There's a lot to do in terms of if you need to shop for groceries. There's Whole Foods, there's a Wegmans in the county, and more Wegmans are kind of popping up all the time. And then also in the neighborhoods in Baltimore City, that's where you can do a lot of fun local shopping and see all the different restaurants and bars as well. There's lots to eat in Baltimore. Of course, we're very known for our seafood, and if you are a person that eats seafood, if you're not like vegetarian or vegan or anything like that, you have to try crabs. It's just like what we do. We pick crabs and drink Natty Bohs. It's kind of our pastime. But regardless of what it is that you eat, whatever cuisine that it is, we have very fancy fine dining, and we have little coffee places where students often go to hang out, study, and do that kind of stuff. So you can basically eat your way through the city. And we also have a really cool network of municipal markets throughout the city, one of which is just a couple blocks down the street, which is the Northeast Market. And it's just stalls and stalls of food. And at our Northeast Market, you can get the really healthy stuff and make salads, or you can get deep fried stuff. You can buy socks, you can buy flowers, really random assortment of things that you can purchase. Okay, sports. Baltimore, we are diehard for our sports teams, and welcome to the home of the world champion Baltimore Ravens. Let's pause for a moment. I know the team is not looking like much what it just looked like in February, but we trust in Ozzie. Yeah, I just had to put in that extra plug of me in the Superdome just winning. Anyway, we do have a lot of sports. Hopkins is actually known for our lacrosse team. And Baltimore, there's the love for the Ravens, and a newfound or rekindled love for the Orioles now that we're hot again. Baltimore Blast, I heard, is like in a championship, or just was. That's soccer. And if you want to play sports, again, we have a lot of social sports that go on throughout the city, a couple different sports leagues, and oftentimes we have students that'll have like the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health kickball team and play in the city league, so you can get really active as well. The great thing about Baltimore is where we're located, and that is really nice for having a lovely weekend trip or a day trip to get to any of these different locations. So Baltimore is often, or Maryland, I should say, is often called mini America because we have beaches, we have mountains, we have everything within our geography. And so you can, get away, you go to the beach, go to the mountains, you can get to DC, New York, Philly, the list goes on and on and on. So these are just some of the fun things that you can do in close proximity to Baltimore. But even if you tried, you probably couldn't hit all the neighborhoods in Baltimore and see all the cool things within a year. Now, let's talk a little bit about housing. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm about to bring the panelists up in a couple more minutes. But we do have a housing office here on campus that kind of connects our students, faculty, and staff to different opportunities. I know you have information within your pamphlets, whatever you have, about housing as well. Certainly, we have the Hopkins Gazette, which is our monthly magazine, and some folks are posting information there. It's also online. Our Baltimore Sun has classifieds. There's our city paper. The city paper comes out every Wednesday. That Baltimore College Town Network, oftentimes they do a lot of housing opportunities there because there's a lot of students living in the city as well. Now, I mentioned that we tend to have a lot of students that live along that Hopkins shuttle route, so they can utilize that for commuting back and forth to work. So some of the neighborhoods that you might hear commonly, Charles Village, Mount Vernon, Fells Point, Canton, Patterson Park, list kind of goes a little bit on than that. And then, of course, when you're coming and living in a new city, you might be in need of a place to worship. You might have needs for childcare for children. And, of course, can I get out and about and exercise? What are the parks and recreation opportunities that are available? So there's a whole slew of resources that we have available that we can connect you for those types of needs. And, of course, some of the other newspapers and websites that'll kind of introduce you to Baltimore and all the wonderful things in our city. There's an organization called Live Baltimore, and Live Baltimore has a list of all of the neighborhoods and talks again about all their different characteristics, so you can learn a little bit more about the neighborhoods. The Urbanite magazine, that's another news or a magazine that comes out. It's also online, and oftentimes you're going to see a lot of editorials from our faculty and staff and students that are pretty engaged as well. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I think I'm looking pretty good on time. We're going to pull up our stools and get ready for our panelists to join me. So feel free to talk as we set up and get ready for our current students.
Oh, it's all you.
All right, so as promised, what we have today is a group of our current students that all live in different neighborhoods. Some of them have actually lived in multiple neighborhoods within the city. And what I'm going to have them each do is going to take each of them a couple of minutes to quickly introduce themselves. They're going to tell you their name and their department, what they're working on here at Bloomberg. And they're going to briefly introduce their neighborhood where they live. And what I also want you guys to do is just say what kind of housing situation you're in. Like, are you in an apartment? Are you in a row home? That kind of details. If you want to say how much you pay, that question always comes up. How much does it cost to live here? That's great. And maybe kind of your favorite thing about your neighborhood. And Jen, I'm going to put you on the spot first. Jen's lived in like every neighborhood. So Jen, introduce yourself and tell us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jen Neighbor, and I am a first-year MSPH student here at Bloomberg, and I actually work with Mindy. So I've lived in Baltimore for about 12 years. So when Mindy says I've lived everywhere, I've pretty much lived everywhere. Most recently, though, I've lived in Fells Point, which Mindy's going to point, I think, right?
Yeah.
Sort of. Right down there at the bottom where it says Northwest Branch right here. Yeah. Most recently, Fells Point, Charles Village, which I don't actually think is on this map, but it's like north up there. And then Roland Park, which is just north of Charles Village. Yeah, there we go. Charles Village is actually right around the Homewood campus, so it's where a lot of the undergraduate students are. So if you're into that sort of thing, it's a great place to live. Let's see what else. Favorite thing about Baltimore, I heard Mindy say it. It's like a city of neighborhoods. That's so true. So depending on kind of what it is you're looking for, you can find a place that really matches your personality. There's a lot of great places to eat. Currently, or most recently I should say, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I've lived in a house, a row house. And rent really ranges, so whatever you're looking for, you'll find a place that kind of matches your price range. But I think my rent most recently was like $795, I think, and then previously to that it was like $1,100. So it really depends. There's a big range.
Hi, my name is Dan Sicanolfi. I'm a first-year doctoral student in health, behavior, and society, and I came here from New York. So. I live in Upper Fells Point right now. I actually live kind of right next to that black dot that says School 23. And I live in a converted row home with two other people, one of whom is actually a postdoc here, and our landlord is a doctoral student who bought the house and rents it out to Hopkins students, which is pretty cool. I pay $750 a month. And that's, I have the entire top floor of the row home, which is nice. It's kind of like a converted attic, but it's actually now the master bedroom. And that includes all the utilities, washer, dryer, washing machine, all of that, which is, or a dishwashing machine, which is great. It's definitely a step up from my previous rent situation. It's a great neighborhood. The thing that I really like about it is, it's very easy to get everywhere. I don't like driving, so I wanted to live somewhere where I could walk. And it takes me about 10 to 12 minutes to get here on foot. I can get to Patterson Park in 10 minutes or less. I can walk to the harbor 15, 20 minutes max. There's Whole Foods and lots of other things down there that are great. Oh yeah, and I live in one of Billie Holiday's childhood homes, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is really cool.
Yeah, there's pictures of my house all over Flickr, which was really weird. Yeah, and as Mindy was saying, it's really easy to get around. I spend probably every other weekend back up in New York. And that's another great thing. It's very easy to get back and forth. And in general, I think people in Baltimore are really nice. It's much more affordable to live here. The pace is a little bit slower, which is nice. Everyone's really high-strung in New York, so it's been a nice change. But yeah, so and if you have any questions about anything specific, I'll be around later too.
Hi everybody, my name is Katie Washington. I'm also a first-year doctoral student in health, behavior, and society. I've lived in Baltimore for, I guess this is my 3rd year in Baltimore now. I lived actually on campus my first year here in Reed Hall, which none of you will have to endure, so congratulations. But right now I live in Mount Vernon, also known as Penn North. I can't tell what the east-west streets are on this map, but I live really, really close to Penn Station. So let's see, I live in an apartment building. It's sort of like a mid-rise apartment building. I have 2 roommates, and one of my roommates has 2 cats. But we live very comfortably in our 3-bedroom apartment. My rent, because I have the master bedroom, is a little bit more expensive than my roommates, but I end up paying around $750 a month, maybe $780 at the most. But I really like my apartment building. Everyone there is really nice. You can have your packages held for you. And like I said, it's about a block south of Penn Station, and there's a shuttle stop there. The Hopkins shuttle stops there in the morning and in the evenings. And it's also accessible to Bolt Bus if you're trying to get to New York. Also accessible to Amtrak, of course. Accessible to the light rail if you need to go to the airport. And all those things are really great. But I actually, like to stay in Baltimore, and my neighborhood has a lot of amenities. We just got a Potbelly, which I'm super excited about. We got a Chipotle in the last year. It's just a wonderful experience. But I think my favorite part about about Mount Vernon actually is it's a very artsy, historical, and it is a historic neighborhood in Baltimore. The iconic Washington Monument is there on Monument Street, and wonderful things happen there. Like they light it up at Christmas time, and all of Baltimore City comes out and drinks apple cider together and listens to Christmas music if you're into that kind of thing, which I am. And yeah, so I've really loved my 2 years in Mount Vernon. The only thing about Mount Vernon is if you have a car, you have to either street park or pay for parking, and street parking is kind of hard because a lot of people have cars. So I pay an extra $120 a month for parking, but there are tons of people who street park and get by. I just am sort of lazy and decided to pay for the convenience of having my own spot outside my building. And most of the high-rise or mid-rise buildings have parking available if you're going to have a car in Mount Vernon, which is nice. So yeah, guys can ask me more questions, but that's my basic overview.
Thanks, Katie. So one thing I'll point out real quickly on our slide here, on our map, these red lines that I have right here, this street here, this is Charles Street, and Charles Street is what cuts our city in half, the east side to the west side. And then along this line here, this is Baltimore Street, and Baltimore Street cuts our city in half, so this is north and this is south. So we always talk about that we're the east side, which means we're the east of Charles Street. And this little happy face here, that's Bloomberg. That's where we live. It is a happy place. So just to kind of give you a little bit of sense of the city. So I'm going to have Erica kind of continue on and talk about her neighborhood.
So my name is Erica Kegler, and I am a second-year PhD student in International Health, Social, and Behavioral Interventions. I have lived in Charles Village for 2 years. So Charles Village is right by the Homewood campus, and I like that. I have taken a class there. I took French there, so I could just walk to class. I teach yoga at the gym there, and they have a really big gym, so I get to use that there for free, so I really like that. I live in a row house, so it's very reasonably priced up there. I feel like it's one of the most reasonably priced neighborhoods. I pay, and so I live with 2 other people, and we each pay about $500. And then my roommate has a car, so we have a spot behind our house where he can park. And then there's also available street parking. You need to pay for the street parking, but it's a lot easier to get than other places in town. So, and then my roommate also has a dog, so that's why he wanted to live there. There's a dog park by us if you have pets. Other things I like, there's Droid Hill Park is just a short run away. So I like to go over there and run. I really like running. What else? It's right by the shuttle stop, so You can take the JHMI shuttle here, and it's easier to get on that than in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon, there's often lines, so like I always usually get a seat on the shuttle, so that's nice. There's restaurants. We too just got, we haven't opened yet, but we're getting a Potbelly, and the Chipotle is always very, very busy. There's other little like cute restaurants too, like Karma, the cafe, and a Starbucks, and other stuff like that up there. So I like it. It's quiet. It's peaceful. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Jacqueline, and I am a second-year Master's of Science student in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, in case you didn't realize we had a biology department at the School of Public Health. Right now, I live downtown. Specifically, I live right above where the two red lines cross. I live right now in a high-rise apartment. It's a one-bedroom. It's 1,300, all utilities included, rooftop pool, pretty awesome. Before that, last year, I was actually living in Highlandtown, which I don't know if it made the map.
It's like over here.
Yeah, it's
keep on going.
It's east of Canton, and so when I was living in Highlandtown, I was actually living in a row home, 3-bedroom row home, 2-story, plus a basement, plus a rooftop deck, and for the entire house, it was $1,800. No utilities included for that, of course. In terms of the neighborhood, the reason why I loved Highlandtown was because of the fact that it's actually kind of a little Latin corridor in Highlandtown. So if you like Mexican food, Peruvian food, Salvadorian food, there's a bunch of places. Chicken Rico's on Eastern Avenue is the best. Yeah.
So good.
You could smell it coming down the street, so it's pretty awesome. Right now I live downtown, and I love living downtown specifically because I don't have a car in Baltimore, and so being able to have easy accessibility to public transportation is really important to me, specifically because I was working on the west side and now I work in Hamden, and so all the bus routes go through downtown, which is really nice. From where I live, if you wanted to take the Hopkins shuttle, though, it's only a 5-minute walk north towards the monument itself. However, I hop on the subway, it takes me 4 minutes to get here, so that's pretty nice as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Radha. I'm a DRPH student in the Health Behavior and Society Department. I live in Patterson Park, I guess sort of on the border between Butchers Hill and Upper Fells Point, but a half block from the park, so I call it the park neighborhood. But I really love living in that area. I love the park. I've lived in Baltimore for a number of years, kind of on and off, and used to live in Mount Vernon and before that in Charles Village. So to give you an idea of like rents in different places, in Charles Village I lived in a apartment building that was like mid-size, I think about 4 floors, and I paid about $750 a month for a 1-bedroom or like a junior 1-bedroom apartment. In Mount Vernon I subletted from a friend, and it was an efficiency for about $650 a month. And over where I am now, I'm in it's called a carriage house. It's a really tiny house that used to be where people put their like horse carriages, but they've turned them into houses now. So all put together, it's probably the size of a 400 square foot apartment. It's small and compact, but it's just me, and I pay about $850 a month, not including utilities. But I love being in a little house now and having kind of separate rooms that I can have my like stressed out computer paper writing room downstairs, but my bed is somewhere else and I don't have to look at the computer while I'm in bed, that kind of thing. I have a back patio, and I really love my street. On my street, there's a guy that planted little plants all along the street, and he goes and takes care of all of them and will check in with you and see how you're doing and stuff like that. So it actually has a really neighborhoodsy feel to it. He just kind of feels like someone that's looking out for you, that is a random guy that lives down the street, and that kind of thing.
Great. Thanks so much. So again, we wanted to introduce a couple of the neighborhoods to you all, and what we really want to do is leave the remainder of our time to you all. This is your opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. Panelists, not everyone needs to respond to every question. We will repeat the questions because we're being recorded, so folks can hear our questions, so make sure we pass around the mic. But we turn the floor over to all of our visitors. What do you want to ask us about living in Baltimore? Great, you're right here.
I was just wondering how you get groceries and that kind of thing. Being from New York, some areas there's no grocery stores. It's kind of a pain. I was just wondering, especially if you walk everywhere. Yeah.
Great. So I'm repeating the question. How do you get groceries in Baltimore City? especially if you're walking or don't have a car?
So a month before I moved here, the local grocery store burnt down, and I was like, oh no, how am I going to eat? So if you sign up using your, you get sort of 2 email addresses. If you sign up using your Johns Hopkins University email address with Zipcar, you get a pretty nice discount. So I have a Zipcar membership. I basically book a car for 1 hour, so it's $10. And in that hour, I loop around to Safeway, which is sort of over near Canton, and I pull up in front of my house, dump all the groceries in the foyer, and then I'm able to get the car back in an hour. So it basically adds $10 to the cost of all the groceries. I do it once every 2 weeks, freeze, perishables and stuff like that, and it works out really well. I was really nervous about that, and it's been really easy with Zipcar.
So I actually use a few options. Plug for my building, there's a Fresh and Greens grocery store right downstairs, so that's super convenient. In addition to that, there's also the Charm City Circulator. So if you're feeling fancy and want to head down to Whole Foods, you can always just take the free bus line down there, and it stops literally on the corner at the Whole Foods, and then come right back up to your building. The other way, if you are open to Safeway, they deliver. And so a really easy option if you don't want to spend the time delivering.
Do that.
Yeah.
Come
the
on,
grocery
Dan.
delivery, seriously, like if you just sign up for it, they also have special deals where it's free grocery delivery if you spend $50. So if you get a group of people together, I mean, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, so Katie's saying there's community-supported agriculture. So we have CSAs that come here actually to Bloomberg, and there's a weekly pickup every Tuesday that people sign up for if you want produce or if you want nice meats. People sign up for that and split them. Yeah, it's depending on how much you pay. It turns out to be like $20 to $23 per week, but sometimes, and you'll split it with a friend, whatever you need. So
There's also the farmers market, which runs from, I think it's like April until December, and it's right underneath the 83 overpass, and a bus stops like right in front of it. So.
And Charles Village also has one that is like all year, so every Saturday. And then also in Charles Village, there's an Eddie's, so I usually just walk and pick up my groceries there. And then there's also 2 Giants in walking distance, so as long as I don't get a ton at a time, which I normally don't, I normally just walk with my groceries, so it's really easy.
Charles Village has a Safeway too on 23rd in Charles Street. So,
yeah, and there's a couple other, basically what are we just talking about? What are they called? Farmers market. Thank you. I couldn't think. We have a farmers market that in the spring comes here to this campus. And then the other thing I mentioned, the Northeast Market. So the Northeast Market is just 2 blocks down the street, and there's a really nice produce guy in the very back. So a lot of people, I do my produce there. It's really easy. Yeah, and affordable. Good. I think we covered that one sufficiently. Yeah, okay, good. Other questions right here. So the question, as a woman, how do you feel living in Baltimore, going out at night by yourself?
So I feel really pretty safe where I am, and I usually, like, if I'm going out, tend to walk to places that are kind of in Fells and sort of that neighborhood. So going around, I do take a lot of precautions. Like, I never pull out my phone and try and, like, text or something while I'm walking. I do the same. I walk to school, back and forth to school, and so usually I'll do the same. Like, I don't pull out my phone. I try and kind of keep my wits about me, make sure I look around and I'm kind of aware of who's around me when I'm walking. But I haven't felt threatened, and I know that that's there's a variety. It's a city, and so there's things that happen. But I've felt pretty safe in my house too. What's been really great is that I do have neighbors that I know look out for each other, and I do try and get to know my neighbors, so that way they know if there's someone that's on the street that looks like they're loitering in a weird way or something, they'll let me know about it too.
Yeah, my family is from the Midwest, and so, I am very sheltered in a way from city life. spent some time in Chicago growing up, but mostly Indiana family. And so my parents were very concerned about me living in Baltimore. But when I had the opportunity to bring them out here and show them where I live in the neighborhood and how I get around, they were really extremely impressed. And you just have to recognize that you live in a city. And if you haven't lived in a city before, you have to be wise, walk with friends. Like Rada said, do not, walk and text and not pay attention with your headphones on and not pay attention to your surroundings. But it's a city, and I think if you're city smart, you will feel perfectly fine to do the things that you need to do on a daily basis.
Great points. So a lot of times when we talk about living in the city, particularly if you have a car, we often tell people, don't leave your GPS out. Don't leave your satellite radio out. Don't even leave change out, because if people see that, it just becomes an opportunity to say, hey, I need a couple of quarters. So you have to be wise about your car and your surroundings as well. Certainly there is crime in the city. Oftentimes the violent crimes that you hear about are related to the drug culture. So if you're not buying or selling, you should be okay. No, but in seriousness.
I just wanted to add one more thing, because I also volunteer in the city with the health department's needle exchange program, and so I go into areas that maybe I wouldn't want to choose to live in, but I think with that, it's a great chance to kind of give back to the city while you're living here, and the staff that are working with that program, and I think that this is true of a lot of programs that you volunteer with, are really kind of in tune with the fact that they should look out for each other. So the staff with the needle exchange will walk me to my car at the end of our volunteer session and make sure that I get in and get on my way. So that's also just something that if you want to volunteer, just ask someone to do that. And I think that people are pretty understanding of the fact that, you want to look out for each other.
And actually, all 6 of these students are really engaged in the Baltimore community through community service learning courses. So they all are not only living in the city, but are actively engaged. They get to know the resources and the people. And as Rada mentioned, Baltimore is a really friendly city. And when you are talking with your neighbors and they get to know you, they do look out for you. And that's not just for where she lives. You find that very commonly amongst other neighborhoods as well. All right, let's move on. Let's take a couple other questions right here in blue.
I have 2 young kids, and I'm wondering if any neighborhoods stand out as particularly family-friendly.
Great.
So I would say slightly north of the city, near Roland Park, is really nice. It's very family friendly. Charles Village is great too. There are tons of young kids. I actually used to work at the Homewood campus, and we had some professors that lived within walking distance of the campus with their young children. And I know Mindy, until pretty recently, lived. I think you were in Federal Hill. Federal Hill too. So anywhere that there's some open green space tends to be really good. But generally, I would say, I have friends that live all across the neighborhoods of the city that have young kids. So I think it's really just finding a place that kind of speaks to you. But generally, I think it's pretty diverse. You can find anywhere that's nice for your kids.
Good recommendations. One of the nice things, I have 2 young kids as well. And so Baltimore, we have a new organization called the Downtown Baltimore Families Alliance. So we're trying to have more activities for kids and families, and there's constantly free events. So Jen mentioned Federal Hill, which is on the other side of the water, is very family friendly. You can actually walk to the subway and then take the subway that goes right into the hospital. So that's one option. Canton, which is on the other side here. Leslie used to live over in Canton, and that's a great area as well for families. And then the Charles Village, Roland Park that Jen mentioned, where you have a little bit more green space. It's still the city, but it kind of starts to feel a little bit suburban, and the surroundings are really popular.
I was just going to add too, so I also have a young son, and part of the reason why I originally moved to Highlandtown was because it was right by Patterson Park. And so there are always events going on in Patterson Park, for instance. For instance, around Halloween, they do a lot of costume events for Halloween. And then also throughout the year, they have all these festivals to help keep your kids busy while you're trying to do other stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point about Patterson Park. They have cultural events throughout the year. So, different festivals, really good eats, good stuff. All right, other questions that we have. I'm going to go back to the side because you had your hand up before.
With regards to turnaround on apartment hunting, what's usually the average time it takes to look for and secure a place?
What is the average time when you're apartment hunting to turn around and secure your place?
Well, I know for me it was a bit odd. I was living in Highlandtown, decided, or for whatever reason, I wanted to move in February. I went to Charles Towers, which is one of the downtown high-rises. I had my new lease signed within a week. So it's relatively easy if you're a Hopkins student for the Towers.
Yeah. And in other neighborhoods, it's very easy as well. And the first time I was looking for apartment off campus, I, am very OCD, if you will. So I started apartment shopping really early, and then once I, found an apartment, once me and my roommates found an apartment we wanted, they were like, "So how soon can you move in?" We were like, "Maybe a couple months." They were like, "You sure you can't move in faster than that?" So like people, who are leasing their places, are all about your convenience and wanting to get you in and a part of the community as fast as possible. I feel like your story is pretty. How you were like all prepared, like.
Oh yeah.
Apartment hunting.
I sound like such a jerk with like the constant New York references. But yeah, so all of my previous apartment hunting experience was, show up with 3 letters of recommendation, 3 years of past tax returns. I'm not, seriously. If you didn't have that when they showed the apartment, the deal was off and someone would get it before you. So I came down here with like, a file folder full of pay stubs and everything. And it was just, it seems, and a lot of people in our cohort, I think it's sort of, a lot of the landlords kind of keep it in the family, and they seem very warm and welcoming to Hopkins students. So I would mention that in the email. And like I said, my current landlord is a PhD student here who bought a house with his wife and likes to rent it out to students because he knows that they're relatively stable and they'll take care of it. So and it was pretty laid back. The lease was like 1 sheet of paper, where we hand filled in things and signed it, and I handed him a check and he was like, "All right, see you in a month." So it's definitely, it's pretty easygoing. Yeah.
Great. All right, let's take a couple more questions. Ms. Scarf. So the question is, would you recommend purchasing property as a graduate student?
I think it depends how long you want to stick around, really. Most of my friends rent just because they're not sure where their research might take them, or if they have a new job and they're going to move. I will say that the property market in the city is pretty good. I've had friends who just recently bought a place. But again, I think it's kind of personal preference. I don't think any of us up here own. Most people I know don't.
Yeah, if you're going to be doing a doctoral degree and you're going to be here for a couple of years, this is a great time to buy. My parents are real estate agents here in the city, and so no. So what I'm saying is it's hot and it's easy to sell, and the market's pretty good if you're a buyer. Yeah. All right, way in the back. How did you go about finding roommates? For those of you with roommates.
It was easy for me. My roommate, we had been in Peace Corps together, so he was already doing a PhD program, so it was really easy. But like our house is available, so like we'll probably like be putting it on Craigslist because we've had it in the family, like not our, but in the Peace Corps family or like these other families for a really long time. So this is the first time that all 3 of us are going to be leaving at one time. But we'll probably look for, it could be our landlord's job, but we'll probably just do it anyways and put it on Craigslist. And we do subleasers on Craigslist too. Like last summer I was gone. This summer I'm going to be gone. So we just put on Craigslist and have had good experiences with that.
Also, one thing you might want to check out on Facebook, there is a Johns Hopkins School of Public Health group for every year. And it says closed group, but if you just click join, they'll let you go like right away. And a lot of times if you just post something, you'll get about 50 replies of people who are like, "Oh yeah, I want to do that. Let's move in together." So it's pretty easy to find other people who are in the same boat as you.
Talk to people here. That's what Mindy said last year when I was sitting right there. She said, look around, chat with your friends, because you might find a roommate, and it's very true. A lot of people do.
Yeah. The benefit of coming to Visitors Day. Yeah. All right. I've got time for a couple more. Yeah, all right. Here we go.
What areas would you choose not to live in?
Ooh, see, that's a really hard question. Her question is, what areas would you choose not to live in? And I don't think we usually say too often, don't live there, because these are all neighborhoods where people live, and we have, every neighborhood is different. So we're really focusing more on where are the popular neighborhoods where we do live, because there are people that could be sitting in this room all around us that do live in the various neighborhoods. So I prefer to highlight the popular ones versus labeling and saying, don't go there, because it could be a perfectly wonderful place.
I think one thing that was really helpful, I had really no knowledge of the sort of layout of the city and the neighborhoods before I got here, but when I was here for Admitted Students Day, I went down to the harbor, and this sounds so corny, but there's this old man who has a bus driver, and he does tours of the city for like $10, and it's an hour and a half tour, and he puts on all these historical hats and tells stories. But I did it because I wanted to be shuttled around the city to see everything and get a feel for what was a good match and what I was looking for. And it, again, lots of corny sort of history tidbits, but it was fun, and it took me really all around, and I felt like I had a good idea of what Baltimore was like outside of the sort of Hopkins campus. So if you like history, or if you have 90 minutes to kill, I thought that was a great way to sort of get a feel for everything if you're not familiar with the city.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's great advice. I would add to that like for me, I've moved around to different places, and I have progressively liked my neighborhoods better, but mostly because of sort of the feel of them. So like when I was in Charles Village, it's got a feel that's like very, I think, oriented to having undergrads there and things like that. And Mount Vernon was much more city-like, and where I am in Patterson Park, it's a little bit more residential. Like there's not as many restaurants all kind of clumped together, as many shops clumped together, but that's just a better fit for me. And so walking around in each neighborhood, I think, is like a good way to kind of just get a feel for what you like better.
And through the admissions office, we can easily connect folks to current students to talk about neighborhoods. If you want to say, I'm looking at this neighborhood, can you find me somebody that lives there, and we can talk about it? So we can give you those kind of options as well. Because over here, it's really east side and centrally located. There's communities over on the west side, and then you don't have to live in the city. You can live in one of the surrounding counties. And again, going back to Hopkins being the state's largest employer and many people having to come to the Johns Hopkins Hospital, we have a lot of the surrounding counties that have direct public transportation right downtown. So when you're choosing your neighborhood, you have to think about what are the amenities that you're looking for? Do you have a car? Because you want to figure out, if you don't have a car, what kind of transportation options are available. Way in the back. Are you asking, so if you have a car and you live in the county, how much are the prices different? Are you talking about for renting and renting in the county versus renting in the city?
So I did a little homework on that before I came.
Thanks,
because I was interested. And I remember last year sitting here and thinking, why isn't anybody asking about what's it like to live in the county? So I have lived in the county. That's where my parents live. It really depends. If you rent a house, it can be expensive. $2,300, but if you're renting a room, I've seen it for as little as like $700 out in like Cockeysville or Towson, which is about 20 minutes north of the city. I would say the biggest difficulty is going to be commuting in the morning, and I can speak to that because I've done that for about 3 months, and it really stinks. If you can live closer to the city, especially if you have classes in the morning, you're going to be sitting in traffic for over an hour. And at least for me personally, it wasn't really worth it. But it's doable. And there's transportation once you get down closer to the city to get you in. And there's a shuttle, actually. If you're a student, you can park the Church Street lot, and they'll actually drive you directly to the front of the building. So it's very local.
But the subway that comes right to Hopkins, I have a few friends who live out in Owings Mills, and there is a subway stop out in Owings Mills. So if you are, especially for families, they're looking to start having kids soon, so they wanted to have a bigger house where they could have space for their family to grow. So Owings Mills is a good fit for them, and I'm not sure how long it takes on the subway, but
about half hour.
About 30 minutes, okay. But it's super convenient and lets out right on Broadway. So.
And you can get like monthly passes for all the public transportation, and we offer discounts for those monthly passes, whether you're in the city or outside. Am I getting the I can get one more now. Pressure's on, because this has to be a good question, because it's the last question. All right. What's the one thing you would change about Baltimore? You should all stay here and live here after you graduate.
The bus system. The bus system. Hopkins shuttle is great, and the shuttle system that takes us around is wonderful. The circulator is great, but the MTA for me personally, it's challenging. And it takes you a while to learn. It's not the easiest system to figure out. But I will say the caveat to that is that you don't need to use it to really get anywhere. The circulator system now is so expansive that it takes you pretty much anywhere you want to go from, I think it's like 9 to 9 during the week, and then at the weekends it runs slightly later.
So in true interview style, I'm going to try and take your question and turn it around into a positive. When I first moved to Baltimore for my master's, I had moved from DC, and I didn't love Baltimore at first, and I think it's because it's a little bit of a tougher city to get to know. Like, you have to find little pockets of things that are cool to you, and so that I think is tough. They call Baltimore Charm City because it does grow on you, and now I love it here. I like it better than DC, I think, in a lot of ways. So I've found like my little pockets, like my coffee shop that I really like, and my place that I like to go for concerts and stuff like that. But I think that that's a little bit tough as like someone that's new, and you just kind of have to give it time to find the places that you enjoy.
Yeah, I would agree. My neighborhood is great. It's really popular. But after being here, I know that I'm probably going to head over to Mount Vernon next year. It just took me a little while to kind of learn the city and figure out what's what. But I think, to go along with what Rada said, it's really just about keeping an open mind. The experience will be what you make of it. And if you come into it with that sort of perspective, how can I sort of make Baltimore a better place? How can I sort of build it up instead of tear it down? I think that's going to give you a wildly different experience while you're here.
Katie wants the mic. Dan, give Katie the mic.
Yeah, I think I wish I had more time in Baltimore, in the city. We spend so much time on the JHMI campus, and it's a wonderful learning experience. But, I've been here for 3 years, and last year was the first time that I was able to go to Artscape, which is, the biggest outdoor arts festival in the country, and it's literally right outside of my building. And there's so many things that you have the opportunity to explore in the city. But you have to make it a priority and have to take the time to do it, because if you want to be stuck here all the time, there is plenty to do in order to be stuck in JHMI all the time. So I just wish I had more time to explore the little nooks and crannies and get to know some of the neighborhoods outside of my neighborhood, which I haven't always done as great a job doing.
Yeah. So really, we encourage people to explore the different communities, the different neighborhoods. Don't get stuck just coming here and just going back home to the neighborhood where you're living, because you're going to miss out on a lot of really great artistic, cultural, entertaining, fun activities. All right. So if you all would mind joining me in thanking our panelists. It is, we're literally in the midst of finals week. Today's the last day of finals and spring break starts, so I made them stay. And then we'll hang for a little bit. Leslie's going to give you details about lunch, but if you want to ask any questions one-on-one, if you don't want to ask in the group setting, happy to chat with you all. Thank you so much.